All right, folks, we're going to bring this meeting to order, please.
You're on the record.
Thank you, Bonnie.
You're welcome.
Welcome, everyone. Today is Tuesday, January 24th. It's about 7:32 p.m. Here in Town Hall. We're in room 206, and tonight is a Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing, and we also have a general meeting on the agenda. It's a pretty straightforward agenda this evening, so we're going to start right at it. The first item on the agenda in the public hearing is continuation of site plan application number 264B, land filling and regrading application number 541, Darien Board of Education, Holmes Elementary School at 18 and 32 Hoyt Street. The proposal to renovate and construct additions to Holmes Elementary School, including eliminating temporary portable classroom buildings, renovating and expanding the library, constructing classroom additions, a new main entrance, an outdoor courtyard classroom, correctly sizing general and special subject classrooms, upgrading building systems, and adding parking spaces to the existing parking areas, and perform related site development activities, including adding landscaping, plantings, restoration, and adding to hardscape areas, and installing stormwater management. The subject property is situated on the west side of Hoyt Street, approximately 90 feet north of its intersection with Phillips Lane, and is shown on Assessor's map number 25 as lots number 144, 145, and 146 in the R1/3 residential zone and the Municipal Use Overlay Zone. Public hearing is opened, or was opened, on November 29th, 2022. The deadline to close the hearing is tonight, January 24th, 2023, unless an extension is granted at the time by the applicant. That was long. Thank you. Eric is here tonight from KG&D Architects. I think he's going to take us out for a little ride.
Great.
Welcome, sir. Please.
Thank you.
Floor is
for having
yours.
us this evening, and looking forward to this public hearing. Eric, for the record, Eric Heyer, KGD Architects Principal. I'm here this evening with a couple members from the Hindley Homes and Royal Building Committee, Chris Price and Nate Martin. So if you have any questions, they're here to respond to any of those. I'm also here with my colleague Lauren Meyer from KG&D, Joe Canis and Craig Yanis from Ty and Bond. Thank you. You were blank there. Sorry. This evening, I'm going to quickly go through the architectural and landscape architecture elements that we reviewed this last week with the Architecture Review Board. They had a positive response to everything that we were sharing with them, so hopefully you do as well. We will then go through the construction phasing diagrams, and at that point I'll turn it over to Joe, and Joe can go through the stormwater management, and finally Craig can do traffic.
Fantastic. Sounds like a plan.
Good.
We have a bunch of plans for you that we got in our packets, and then we've got a PowerPoint. Also, I think, is that more you or is that more Joe Canis?
That's from us.
Okay.
Yep. So
Fantastic.
I don't know if it's in the same order. We were hoping that the construction manager was going to be here tonight, but they couldn't, so I shifted the order around, so I'm handling the phasing diagrams as well.
Not a problem. Go right ahead.
So what you see on the screen here is the existing Holmes Elementary School from the main parking lot, looking at the existing entrance. The lower photograph is of the original entrance, and show that because during the phasing diagrams, you'll see that we're actually going to utilize the original entrance for a part of the construction period while we're building the new addition in the front. This is a computer artistic representation of what the proposed addition is. To the far right is the music wing. The middle is the link between the front entrance and drop off there, which is a new addition that's directly in front of the cafeteria. This is viewed from the ground, and this is viewed from the air so that you can also see the sidewalks, the paving patterns, and some of the landscape material that's been proposed by Ty and Bond. This site plan shows in blue the 3 proposed additions. The addition at the front entrance, which is the music and front entrance addition. In the back, the large square is the 2-story classroom addition. And in the courtyard in the middle there is the expansion of the library learning commons. Again, we spent quite a bit of time this last week with the Architecture Review Board going through landscape. On the left there shows the existing site plan and the trees with red X's that are planned to be removed for a new service road as well as for additional parking. And ultimately, there's 20 additional trees that are planned to be planted. The ARB was very appreciative of those because those trees that are planned to be planted are actually in the areas where the students will gather during the school day so that they can utilize the trees for shade and other seating opportunities. And we showed this landscape planting. We also showed different types of seating arrangements on campus. In the back, directly behind the cafeteria, there's going to be new picnic tables. So there's outdoor seating during nice weather. And around the property where the trees are, we're also planning on these sort of S-shape and C-shape wood and steel seat benches. The courtyard in front of the library learning commons today is all asphalt, and the future is planned to be a landscape courtyard with a play surface and a performance area and plenty of seating around the perimeter. So next 5 slides have to do with the site logistics and phasing plan. The plan is to start construction this summer of 23. Not going to have a tremendous amount of time to do a whole lot this summer, but we will be proposing to install the construction fence, which is the red line that you can see that is into the woods of the Curtis property and back onto the playing field and tying back to the first and second grade wing there in the backside. We are also in the front of the building going to be doing some trenching for a future transformer. We want to get that trenching done and the conduit put in place over the first summer, because you can see in this next slide that there's a green dashed line there in front of the original building, and that is shown as where the planned access point is to the main building during the first phase of construction. So the original entrance will be restored as the primary entrance. It will be accessible while we're constructing the 2 orange sections. Everything that you see in yellow there is the construction site. We'll have the site trailer in there. We're building in purple a temporary road which turns into a permanent service drive, and then in orange are the 2 planned additions. Back on the playing field at the top of the page in blue is where the underground stormwater detention is, and Joe will go into greater detail about that in a few minutes. The second summer of 24, we will be finishing the work in the yellow area there, so that the 2 additions will be completed, as well as the stormwater detention will be completed at that point. I should say that during that whole school year of 23-24, there will be emergency egress from all areas with appropriate distancing, so that there aren't any dead-end corridors, etc., so that students and staff can exit safely in the case of an emergency. The second summer of this is the school year of 24-25, where there's not a tremendous amount of work being done that summer. We're going to finish up the access service road. We'll be finishing up some of the site work associated with the area in yellow and preparing for the summer of 25, where we plan to construct the addition to the library learning commons and do all the additional landscape work that you saw in some of those earlier slides in that area. And so by the end of summer of 25, this project's planned to be complete. Any questions related to phasing before I turn it over to Joe?
Just real quick, Where the kids disembark from their parents' car, is that at the new flagpole?
It's starting at the flagpole and wraps around the corner, yes,
So you get out at the new flagpole and you go in the doors that's on an angle now?
that's correct.
Okay. My 4 kids went there for 5 years each, so.
The only difference from where the entrance is today is pulled out and it's angled to face the drop-off. And so
But
it's,
the teacher monitor is gonna have the kids get out at the new flagpole.
that's right.
Okay, got it. Because that changes the queuing and whatnot.
Mr. Canis, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, for the record, my name is Joseph Canis. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut, principal engineer with the firm of Ty and Bond in our Shelton, Connecticut office, and I was the engineer for the stormwater management and the sediment erosion controls for the proposed additions and renovations. So, last time I was before you on Holmes was November 29th, and a few things that have happened since then. We've received our peer review comments. And we've responded to them. And in fact, yesterday we did receive a letter from the peer reviewer stating that his only concerns were minor and they could be incorporated as conditions of approval. And we've also met with along with the design team and the building committee, we met with DPW to get their input into the design. The Board of Ed has scoped the pipes beneath the athletic field and cleaned those. And based on the peer review comments, the input from DPW, some of the things that we heard at our last hearing, as well as the input from the school board facilities, we revised the plans, and that's the current set you see before you. And again, the overall design goals for the project align with Section 880 of the Planning and Zoning Regulations for stormwater management, which include no increase in peak flow from the site, no increase in volume discharge from the site, and reducing the peak flow and volume for the downstream neighbors to the extent that we can. So the principal change that we made was last time around we had proposed some underground chambers. Lake Drive is up here, north is to the top. You can see the proposed additions. This is the proposed north addition and the proposed addition on the west side.
Joe, could you pick up the mic?
Sorry.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right, so we initially had proposed the underground detention system here, and one of the comments from our peer reviewer was that it was located too close to the building in the event of maybe a future expansion, or more relevantly, too close to the construction activity. There's it could be compacted with the construction activity over it. So we moved it to the athletic field. So you see that there. The size remains the same. We're still providing 69,000 gallons of storage. So that's the change that we made to the system there. And again, these just to reiterate, we're still proposing the same chambers, but again, how they work is the water fills up the chamber system, it fills up the stone around it, and it infiltrates into the ground. They're traffic rated. The advantage of these versus a detention pond is that you could use the ground above it for other purposes. In this case, we're using it for the athletic field. So existing conditions, impervious cover. Impervious cover drives a lot of the runoff. The more impervious cover you have at a site, the more runoff that you get from a site. So right now what you see here in light gray is basically driveways or parking lots, and the brown is the existing school building. So those are the areas that are impervious coverage today. Under the proposed condition, you can see our additions here in the darker brown. You can also see the proposed service drive, but you can also see we're making some changes in the back. We're cutting back on some of the impervious cover. But the net change, it is an increase of 0.12 acres, so we have to somehow manage that. And what we're doing, that proposed chamber system does manage that. So where the runoff goes, what you see here is a watershed map. And on this particular site, the runoff drains in 5 different directions. You have this lighter blue and a darker blue. They all flow off towards the west, towards the pond in Lake Drive. The pinkish area here drains to the north, overland towards Lake Drive. This yellow area here drains to the northeast toward Hoyt Street. This area here in the orange drains to the east to Hoyt Street. And this area in the green drains overland to the southeast, again towards Hoyt Street. Under proposed conditions, you can see not a lot has changed. Right? The only real change is that we're bringing a little bit more into the blue area, taking away from the pink area, and that's because of the service road here. Since we're cutting into a little bit of that existing watershed area, we're bringing it into the bluer area. So we did our computations, our analysis, and what this shows is a comparison of peak flow. And what you can see, the blue area is primarily area 2. And what you can see here is that for the 10-year event, we're actually reducing peak flow by 100% because of the combination of our detention system and the natural depression that's in that area. What you start to see under existing conditions, though, is that in the 10-year, that depression starts to overflow. So under proposed conditions, that depression doesn't start to overflow until you get to the 25-year storm. Right? So in the 25-year storm, the existing discharge is 1.18 cubic feet per second, whereas the proposed is 0.2 cubic feet per second. So we're reducing the amount of the rate of flow off the site in that direction, and that's a reduction of 83.1%. And as you can see, we also looked at 50, and we also looked at the 100, and we're showing reductions or meeting existing conditions for all 6 directions. And we also looked at volume, right? Peak flow is how much volume is coming off at a rate, right? It's basically how fast it's coming off the site. Volume looks at just the total amount of runoff that comes off the site. And you can see here, it's a similar story, right? We're reducing it for all the storms we looked at, from 2, 10, 25, 50, and 100. So basically, and just to give you an idea, the 100-year is about 8.5 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. So it's a pretty significant reduction. We're reducing flow to all directions, including the neighbors on Lake Drive. And a little bit, I mentioned that natural depression. This is an enlargement of the northwest corner of our site plan. At the last hearing, there were some questions about how much storage is in here. So I did an enlargement so we can all see it. The lowest elevation right here is at elevation 38. And you will see a contour 50 here, but you actually see that it actually slopes down in the middle here. There's a saddle, and that is at elevation 45. So basically, any runoff that discharges into here collects in this basin, a natural basin, and builds up, and then when it reaches elevation 45 is when it starts to spill over and head overland towards Lake Drive.
So that's 5 feet deep, right? 50 minus 45 minus?
It is actually 7, but there's not a whole lot of storage at 38.
Okay.
So it's a pretty significant amount of storage.
Are you going to talk about the other end that's to the east?
Well, to the east, that doesn't really hold a whole lot of water, so we actually did not include that in our computation. The other thing that we discounted in our computation, even though it happens, the soils here are pretty good. You got hydrologic class A soils here. So this infiltrates into the ground. We discounted that. We did not include that in our analysis, so it provides a more conservative analysis. And then what happens beyond the storage area, I know we said it goes to Lake Drive, but so you can envision it, our on-site storage area is here, Holmes School's over here. So it goes to the northwest, overland, into the pond, which is then connected to the Norotan River. And the watershed of the Norotan River is significantly larger than the size of the watershed on Holmes School. So the Norotan River really drives the flooding events down at the bottom of Lake Drive.
Great. That's your different on-site storage. That's your natural one that's there today. It's not the new man-made one that you're putting in.
Right, yeah, just as a clarification, right, that's correct. This is the natural one that's there today. That's the existing one.
Okay.
Okay?
Can you just make sure that everyone knows that when you come in to 28, which is, I think, Mrs. Curtis's old house, they got them a long time ago, that is it whole, which is all the way to the east.
right here.
Right, the
That's
topography, it changes significantly there.
Yeah, right, it drops down there, right? And that's another point. There used to be a house there. That house is no longer there, so that's impervious cover that's been taken away.
Right? And then Mr. Lindell's house is to the north of that, and that's up higher than where Mrs. Curtis's house was.
That's correct.
Okay? Do you know the drop of that off the top of your head?
Let's see, looking at this, each of these contours, I would say is 2 feet. If you're looking at
Lindell's all the way to-
150, 149, that area, you're probably looking at about a 8-foot difference.
Yeah, so it's a huge hole in the ground.
Yeah. So why not send more to Hoyt Street? And if you remember, we looked at that watershed map. There's not a whole lot that goes there now, right? And Hoyt Street is not a town roadway, it's a state highway, and we would need DOT approval, and the state would be very resistant to sending more water into their drainage system, particularly when they've have some capacity issues further downstream. So that's why we're not sending more that way. And the other reason is we're actually reducing flow to the northwest following the natural drainage pattern. So why rebalance things and make things more complicated out there. Again, just to reiterate some of our design standards, the town's stormwater design standard for a detention system is 50-year. We're providing a 100-year design. We're reducing peak flow in all 6 directions. We're also reducing runoff volume in all 6 directions. We're not looking at the site as a whole, we're actually looking at the 6 different directions. So in summary, peak flow in all directions is reduced. Runoff volume in all directions is reduced. Right, we're balancing the DPW comments, our physical constraints, the neighbor flooding concerns, as well as the ecological concerns, right? We don't want to cut off all water to that pond, right? We need to have some flow in that direction, which is what we're doing. We're exceeding the 50-year town design standard with a 100-year design. It also enhances student safety, right? We don't have the detention pond, and we're allowing some green space, the athletic field above that. And initially, early on, one of the initial designs had a detention pond. And we're also meeting the maintenance standards of the school district. They want something that's accessible, so we're providing something that they can actually physically drive up to and maintain. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission might have.
The only thing I just want you to go back over is, can you just explain to us and the general public the existing contours of the land, specifically behind the upper school, behind the upper school playground, before you get to the fence?
Okay.
Because there's a natural berm there today, which is, if you look on your survey, it
Okay.
shows it.
So
It goes from 69 to 70.
In this area here?
Nope, where's? Yeah, right there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right, okay,
behind
so-
your new Coltech systems is the upper class playground.
Right,
And there's a
okay.
fence right behind it. There's
That's-
a natural berm right there.
That's right, yeah, there is a berm here, it climbs up and then it goes down. And the same thing here along this west fence line as well.
That's
There
right.
is a berm along this fence line so that if you were walking from east to west, you'd actually climb up the berm and then go down as you approach Phillips Lane. The one thing that we did do here in response to a neighbor concern was there was a very tiny drain here that tended to get plugged quite often. So what we did was we did change that out to a much larger drain with a deeper sump.
Great.
That way it's more difficult to clog because of the larger grade area.
So that's between the third base on the baseball field
That's
and
about right.
the left field where the Yankees need a new left fielder,
Correct.
right against the fence. Okay, right now, that's a round sewer head, I think, a round drain. You
It's
make
a
it
very
square.
it's a small 12-inch round drain.
I think it's bigger than 12 inch, but we're not going to debate it. Then go a little bit further north. There's a staircase that goes down to Lake Drive. No, I think you're too high.
Do I? It's somewhere in this area here, I believe.
No, it's a little bit lower.
A little bit
It's
lower?
right,
Okay.
right there.
Yeah, okay.
That staircase, okay? It's a natural staircase. There's also a lip there where water cannot go down that staircase, correct?
That's correct. That's right.
Right, so all the water that's on the soccer field stays on the soccer field.
Right, exactly, and that's why that drains here, right? Because it hits the berm, and then it's forced into the drain. And then from that drain, it's piped back towards the east, and then it goes north into the wooded area, and then it makes its way into the depression.
Okay, and so if I'm reading this plan right, the kids' playground is at elevation 67,
That's correct.
and the top of the berm up against the fence is about 70,
That's right.
right? So that's about 3 inches lower?
At 3 feet.
3 feet, yes, I'm
3
sorry.
feet.
Feet, inches.
Right,
all
yeah.
same thing.
And so what happens there, right, it flows in this, back towards the school, and also enters a drain here. It's kind of a little bit of a divide there, but
So this weekend, when it rained on Sunday, you'd have to have over 3 feet of water in that kid's playground to get up and over the berm into the wetland. area.
right, yeah, it would overtop at the lowest point of the berm.
And what's a 3 foot depth? What kind of storm is that? Is that a 10-year or a 3-year?
To produce 3 feet of water on that field, you're looking at probably at least 100.
Okay. So to get up over the berm, you have to have a significant storm to get into that.
Yes, you would.
It's not like a sheet flowing off of the playground into that thing, right?
Right, yeah, it would need to be, it would need to pile up there, right, because you have the berm here and here. It would just need to pile up 3 feet, and that field is probably at least an acre, maybe acre and a half. So it would be a 100-year storm, which we, documented that our system here, combined with the depression, would reduce peak flow to the northwest.
Okay. Then at the other part, at the corner of the existing building, right past the second chain link fence is the low port that goes on to Mrs. Curtis's old property. That's the low, there's a pathway, that's the low point. Is that gonna be filled in because you're putting a temporary road there?
This area here?
Yeah, right now if you go, there's a double gate on this side of the cafeteria. Yeah, there's 2 locked fences. If you get through the second locked fence, that's the lowest point on the property that goes into Mrs. Curtis's. Is that gonna get filled in because you're putting the road
Right, yeah,
there?
we are proposing fill in this area here,
Right.
right to the northwest of the addition. But by filling that, right, we're also, rerouting the drainage into this system, into the proposed drainage system here. So right now, there are roof leaders that come off the building into that low area,
Right?
right? So what we're doing is we're actually picking up those roof leaders, the existing roof leader, and bringing it into the system here, so that we get a chance to infiltrate it and attenuate that peak runoff, and then we discharge it into the same area where it was going under existing conditions.
Okay, so that low point on your survey, which is about 66, is not gonna be 66 anymore.
That's correct.
You're raising it up, what, 3 feet? 4 feet?
Yeah, it depends because it's on a slope, so it's going to vary.
Okay. Okay, I wanna make sure we're on the same page. Any questions from this side of the table? Yeah, Mike?
Can you just go over the close, the pink, the light blue?
Oh, sure.
Just go over that again.
Yeah, so let me go back one. So this is under existing conditions, right? So anything in blue ends up going to the northwest towards the pond and Lake Drive. Right, so what happens here is the darker blue is what's contributing to that natural depression here at the western end of the property. And when that overflows in Area 1, so both of these areas combine and then go to the northwest. Area 3 is actually is overland flow towards Lake Drive, right? Because there's a drainage divide here. If you look at the contours, you can see the ridge line there.
But that's basically of the unimproved property today,
That's correct.
because that's Mrs. Curtis's old house,
That's right. Yeah. It's the northern portion of the former Curtis
which has not been used in the last 20 years.
And then we have this yellow area, right? Because the whole parking lot actually comes down this way. This area actually drains. The yellow area drains towards Hoyt Street. The orange area is the south entry drive, the south bus loop, and that drains towards Hoyt Street, right? So that the reason for that is so the Hoyt Street water doesn't drain back into the site. And then this southeasterly area drains towards overland to the southeast, towards Hoyt Street as well.
Okay. And then can you just, the natural depression, you had a slide on that
Sure.
saddle. And so what, the peak elevation on that is what?
Okay. All right, so the actual saddle elevation here is 45, which is where, basically, there's a ridge line here, right? You
Right.
can see it in blue, right? So 45 is the lowest elevation on that ridge. So once elevation of the ponded water reaches 45, it hits that lowest point on that ridge, and then it starts to spill over. I mean, the ridge goes up to at least elevation 50. You see a little 50 contour here, 50 contour here. But it's going to overflow at the lowest point on that ridge, which is 45.
So if you were to somehow buttress that bridge, you could get another 5 feet of storage capacity?
Well, you could, but there are reasons why you wouldn't want to do that. First of all, DEP would likely regulate that as a dam,
Okay.
right? And that would require the school to have, much more stringent maintenance requirements. They'd have to remove all the vegetation, from that berm. And that berm, has some screening value. But as a dam, you'd have to remove that because in the event of a storm, tree topples, you lost the berm.
Okay. And then downstream from that, there's another slide. Now, is that blue area all water from this site?
This blue area here?
Yes.
No, that is the pond on Lake Drive.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the red line then is the overland flow to that pond?
Right, yeah, so this area that I've circled is the area, that natural depression, all right, the existing one. And then this arrow shows the flow path that, water follows the contours down to Lake Drive. And this contour information comes from the town GIS.
Okay. And then there's an outlet from the pond. Did you make any observations on that outlet? Not that you were required to.
No, I did not make observations on it. We did speak to DPW about that. And one of the issues with that outlet is that it's constantly submerged. And it's also subject to sedimentation because the sediment naturally moves down the river.
So the outlet side is subject to sedimentation?
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that's not a town pond, that's a private pond?
Yeah.
Yes, based on the GIS, right, there's an open space property here, but this shows it all as belonging to private properties surrounding the pond.
Okay,
That's all.
George? You good? Amy? You all good?
I have
Okay.
one question.
Go ahead, shoot.
When you guys cleaned out the pipes, it seems like that's the main thread about a bunch of these properties. How bad, do you know how bad they were when they cleaned them?
Actually, this one, surprisingly, the pipe was pretty clear, actually.
And this is the pipe that's going from that back field drain
That's
all the
correct.
way down to, down to it, right? That's the pipe we're talking
Right,
about?
it's a pipe, yeah, that runs from the basin along the west side of the field to the east back into the, towards the school.
And increasing the size of that drain, right, because it's small, that doesn't mean the pipe itself can handle the capacity of the bigger drain, right?
That's correct, right. Right, yeah, and this actually, the larger drain would allow any ponding there would be reduced because it would drain more effectively. But there is certainly capacity for that drain in there.
So that's the drain that's up against the fence, that's beyond third base.
That's the one.
Okay. Okay, Amy, you're good? Do we want to do the peer reviewer now?
Yeah, Mr. Ritchie, who is the peer reviewer for stormwater management, could not be here
Oh,
today.
he's not, okay.
He's with the firm SLR. He did send in a memo. Commission members have the memo. We posted it to the online permit. But basically, he had some very minor comments for Mr. Canis. And Joe and I discussed those, and those are all applicable to be dealt with prior to the building permit. Things that, I think there was some extraneous notes on the plan.
I was just going to read it.
Yep, go
Takes
ahead.
2 seconds. Okay, it says, "Hi Fred, from Todd Ritchie. It's today about 3 o'clock this afternoon." It says, "Have you reviewed the revised materials from Joe Canis, Ty and Bob, including the following comments response letter dated January 18, 2021, and 2020, what year are we in? 2023, which is right here, okay? Site plans revised as of January 24, 2023, and the site engineering report revised as of January 17, 2023, which we have on those. I'm satisfied with the responses provided by Ty and Bond. The only remaining minor comments I have, which I did not pick up before, are as follows. It appears a label should be removed on drawing C-403, sediment control phase, which erroneously calls out a proposed detention basin and the inlet northwest of the north building addition, see below. A riprap, and the second point is a riprap apron is not shown on the proposed end wall downstream from manhole DMH number 8 and should be added. Also below are additional locations where a silt fence should be added to drawing C-402 SE on phase 2. That's just silt fences. You got this, right?
I did receive that.
Okay.
And we take no exception to those comments, and we'll incorporate them.
Yep, let me know if you have any questions. I wasn't planning to attend the meeting tonight since my commentary last meeting affirmed my acceptance of the proposed stormwater design pending the review and acceptance of Time Bond's response to my technical review comments. Perhaps Joe can bring the revised drawings to the meeting and address a few minor comments I've included in this email. You address these few minor comments?
We are going to address them as potential conditions of approval because they're minor.
Okay. And this letter, which is dated January 18th, goes point by point through all of the items, which are, there are 13 of them, and all this stuff is done, right?
That's correct.
You said you did it all.
Right, that's incorporated in the plan set that you have.
Okay, great. We'll hold off on public comments for this now and keep the ball moving, and we're going to go into traffic next.
Craig Giannis is here from Ty and Bond to present traffic, and then Greg Del Rio from Hardesty and Hanover is the peer review.
Fantastic. Greg, Hennis, the honest, you're up,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thanks. For the record, Craig Yanis, project manager at Ty and Bond, professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. I'm going to briefly go over our responses to the peer review comments from Hardesty and Hanover dated 11/28, which we kind of talked about at the last hearing, and then the letter that you received yesterday, we received yesterday. So I'm going to order it by the first letter, and then the comments are kind of similar. But essentially, we've met all of those comments. The letter today indicated that they've accepted all of our revisions. So just to run quickly through those. The first two comments talked about traffic volume and analyses. So the original analyses in the traffic statement looked at the peak intersection volumes for the driveways. It was requested that we look at the peak driveways in and out of the peak volumes of the driveway movements in and out. We did that. We found the same results. Everything was acceptable at the driveway intersections. And like I said, Hardesty and Hanover concurred with these results in their letter from yesterday. The third comment commented on the traffic signal warrant analysis. So we did perform the revisions that were requested last time, and essentially the intersection did meet the minimum traffic volume warrants for a signal. However, as we mentioned in the traffic statement and the peer reviewer mentioned it, the project's not expected to significantly increase traffic or significantly impact the traffic operations. Therefore, the traffic conditions should be continued to be monitored at the intersection, and potential signalization should be completed through another town project to address the existing condition issues that are out there. Hardesty and Hanover again agreed with this conclusion that the school project is not causing a need for mitigation. The next comment.
Just to make sure we're on the same
Sure.
page, that is the existing, I want to call it the Five Corners traffic intersection where
sorry,
there's a
should've
blinking
mentioned
light. It's at the base of Christie Hill Road, at the base of Middlesex Road, at the base of Hoyt Street, and whatever that other street is that I drive by every single day.
Yeah, Christie Hill Road.
West Avenue. Is it called West Avenue? I don't think so. It's the one that goes to Research Park. Anyway, the name doesn't change.
It's Middlesex, yeah.
It's Middlesex twice.
It's Middlesex twice. One's a state road, one is not.
And
correct.
just so we're all on the same page, every single morning, starting at about 7:30, the crossing guard is there,
Correct.
right? He's there from 7:30 till about 8:30 in the morning, stopping traffic, including me. And at night, he's back there in the evening at whatever it is, 2:30, to all that stuff. So is that all, I mean, I read your letters, but is that all addressed in another report that it states that there's a traffic guard there during all school hours?
I'm not sure about if it's defined anywhere. I think our intent is that we observe the existing operations, they'll remain that way, and that crossing guard should be there.
Okay.
That is our opinion. That is the one crossing to the sidewalk that's on the west side of Hoyt Street. So there's no sidewalk on the east side. So it's important that you have that crossing from the neighborhood, from Christie Hill, from Middlesex, that connects to the other sidewalks that are south and east of there.
Okay.
And so we do think that those crossings are important, that crossing guard is important. So
Right.
we're not proposing any changes to what happens today.
Okay.
And I should have mentioned that this aerial, it's the bottom intersection down here that we're talking about. It's an all-way stop condition.
It's always stop
Yep,
condition.
and so that every direction stops. When
Right,
they come
yeah,
up to the
that's
intersection,
Christie-
you wait until,
Right, that's Christie Hill going up in the gray.
this is Christie Hill here.
Right, and
Middlesex,
that's
Town
Middlesex.
Roadway, Middlesex, State
Right.
Route 106, Hoyt Street, State Route
Right.
106.
Okay. And that guy's always there, and there's no reason why he would ever leave. He's been there for
Correct.
20 years, 22 years. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Looking at the site itself, so there was a comment on the field observations. Again, it corroborated what we saw when we went out there. The peer reviewer went out there as well. The one thing was that we were going to instruct the buses to use the entire bus loop, which is to the south of the building. In order to make sure that there's maximum storage, the buses didn't exceed that storage, but there was more room in there if they could pull all the way up. The next comment was about the site plan, and just clicking to the next figure here. They wanted more details added for pavement markings and signage. We've done that. I should just got this in my hand. The one and most important piece was the do not enter signs, which are here and here on either side of the driveway, denoted by this B. So if you come into the driveway, you have to make a right turn. It's a one-way operation all the way around. That just reinforces that there's pavement arrows pointing in that direction and the signs, the do not enter signs. So they're all there. And then the last comment had to do with the parking on the north end. So the parking's on the far north end, away from the pickup and drop-off operations, which happen down in this area of the site. That's going to remain today. It's still the intended operation that students get dropped off in that area. The spaces we are going to designate as staff only, so that they're not in operation during the pickup and drop-off. That was a recommendation. We're going to do that.
Or which spaces?
These are the ones up to the north here. There's
Okay,
10 along the south
the new
side,
ones. Yep.
all the way to the top of the plan. And so we are going to make those staff only. Therefore, we think that the parking spaces can remain in the plan. Again, Hardesty and Hanover said that they find this layout acceptable. And that pretty much wraps up the comments on the traffic. We've addressed all of them, and we think we're in agreement on the conditions.
Okay, Nick, can you just confirm and tell everybody that you're moving the sidewalk there on the north end?
Yeah, that's correct. So the sidewalk's going to go, right now it goes past this maple tree and around the outside of the parking area. We're going to take that and we're going to go straight across along it all the way around. So there's a continuous path all the way to the building. So it'll circulate the whole parking area.
Great. I walk that path every Sunday and Saturday with my dog.
Now you have a few more feet if you're looking for exercise.
Is that a hint?
I need some, that's for sure.
Okay, so the sidewalk's gonna come in off of,
So it's just gonna
coming
be-
in off of Hoyt the way it does today.
It's a little bit further north to line
Yep.
up with what's there, with the parking spaces as opposed to where the edge of the parking is now. But yeah, it's a short distance different.
Okay, fantastic. Anything else?
That's it on my end.
Okay, before we switch to him, any questions? Good? Good, fantastic. You're on.
Greg Delray.
Craig Del Rio. So Greg, we got your letter today, dated January 23rd, which is yesterday, but go ahead.
Good evening, Greg Del Rio, transportation engineer, professional engineer from the state of Connecticut. We performed a peer review so they submitted responses to our last round of comments on the first submission, and pretty much addressed all of the comments appropriately, and I'll be very brief. We concur with everything that Craig just presented, so I don't need to reiterate it, but if you have any questions, I'd be glad to elaborate or answer any questions.
Okay. The only thing I couldn't understand is in your letter at the bottom, you talk about the fire lane for vehicles. Where's the fire lane supposed to be?
Well, it's not, I don't think it's marked out here.
Isn't the whole thing a fire lane?
Basically, the fire lane, generally goes all around the curb as you go, but that's where it's, against the sidewalk that's used for drop-off and pickup, as you know.
Right.
And so today, what happens where the sidewalk actually comes around the edge of the existing
Could you pick up the
parking
mic,
lot.
please? Thank you
Sorry.
very much.
Today, as you come around this edge, there's about 3 or 4 cars that use that part of the sidewalk for the drop-off activity.
Yep.
So obviously, with these parking spaces, they'll just have to wait their turn till they get to the sidewalk, is basically the concern.
But now, just to go back to what I was asking Eric before, the drop-off point now is, I'm going to say on the north side of the cafeteria. It's not by the entrance, right?
Well, yeah, it's before the crosswalk, correct?
It's before the crosswalk, which is a service driveway to the back.
Right.
Or it's south of that.
Yep,
Okay, by the new flagpole. And then the kids are going to walk down the sidewalk and go into,
correct.
and so you're going to have queuing on both sides of the drop-off. Okay, and that's fine. Perfect.
Right.
Any questions for Greg? I think we're good, right? Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. What do we have next in our little packet? We did this, we did traffic. Traffic on this. Okay, Eric, you good?
Good.
Okay,
We're good.
thank you. All right, so at this point, we can open up to the general public, right?
That's
There's nothing to add, you guys good?
No, I think the only thing that, when I spoke to Eric before the meeting, one thing that the whole plan envisions is taking the 3 parcels, the existing school parcel, the now vacant Curtis parcel, which the town bought a few years ago, and that, I'll call it forever vacant parcel to the north, and combining them, because that really changes all the setbacks. That's been one of the premises of this from day one. I know the Board of Ed has talked to the Board of Selectmen about that, and that's been given the go-ahead, as Eric explained to me.
That's correct.
So that's part
So-
and parcel of this.
So we're de-subdividing this.
Yeah, we're combining all the lots together.
Okay.
And
So next time when I read this, it's not gonna say lots 144, 145, 146. It's gonna say 144, the other 3 are gonna go away, the other 2 are gonna go away.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Merging?
Merging, yep.
Yeah, because one is a postage stamp lot, Mrs. Curtis's house. There's no frontage. Okay, you're good, right?
That's all
You're
set.
good, Fred? Okay.
All good, yep.
At this point, I would like to open up to the general public to see if anyone would like to speak to this application. Please come forward, state your name for the record.
Should I go over here?
Please. There's 2
Do I want to
microphones,
touch
one's
this
TV.
laptop? Is that all right if I
worry
close
about
it, or?
Anything you want.
All right, I'll close it. So, hey, I'm Rick Corinne.
Could you spell your last name for me, please?
Yeah, Grimm.
Thank you.
I'm a resident of Lake Drive. I had 3 of 3 kids attend homeschool, so I've known it for a long time and had kids actually attend with Steve.
That's right.
The first thing I'll say, and I know we got into topography a little bit, but when we look at these aerial photos, you just want to make sure everyone understands that the density of that property that would be clean cut for this construction is as dense as Woodland Park. So we're talking about a lot of loss of trees. I know from an analytical standpoint, there's only a certain diameter that gets counted. If you go back there, you'll realize that's as dense as Woodland Park. So I think we should just make note of that. Secondly, the grade there that we're talking about on the north side of the school is about as steep as any in town. So we're talking about a pretty complicated construction. And it's one thing on the building, it's another thing when we talk about adding that service road and the retention walls and all of that. The other thing I would say, just to level set a little bit, and I didn't admittedly pay attention to the whole Oxbridge process, it seemed like from minutes from there that there was actually community engagement. And I would say for this project, there's been 0 proactive community engagement. The only engagement that we had started in October when we started sending letters on behalf of some of the neighbors. And you know, P&Z was copied, so you've seen those letters. Hopefully, you know what we're referring to. And then we got 2-minute sound bites, typically at the front end of an HHR session versus actually understanding what would be presented that day. So I just wanted to make comment on that. I hope stakeholders are being treated equal. And really what I wanted to focus on here today, and I speak for a group of Lake Drive residents, one's traveling, one's out with COVID, is really 2 elements of the plans. And these 2 elements were always deemed addendums to the original works. And that's the service road and that's the parking. And we raised concerns about the service road and the parking. Originally, the parking was going to be down into a lot of that green space, and I think there were a lot of reasons why that shifted. So, you know, obviously acknowledge and appreciate that. I'll focus on the service road maybe first. And so, you know, really the concerns with the service road are what I was saying about just the environment that would be going through. Topography, loss of trees, erosion, so on and so forth. But the 3 reasons that were cited for the service road originally by the HHR committee were access for fire. At one point it was portrayed that every school in town had fire access. DHS doesn't. I think Tokenique, you can get a golf cart around it, but you can't get a fire truck around it. So that seemed to fall away. It was for the garbage disposals, but I think, as you know well, Steve, garbage disposals have been coming through the existing fire lane for over 4 years without any issues or problems. So that seemed to fall away. The real reason that I think it's happening now, right, is construction staging. And it does ease the construction staging, I get that, but I think you have to ask at what cost you're putting a permanent impervious surface through, again, a topography where you're losing a lot of trees, you're going in a steep grade, you're gonna have to have all this retention costs, maintenance costs. And so you have to wonder on that front, and I hope that gets properly assessed and addressed. And then the last thing is safety. So the biggest issue, or one of the biggest issues we had from a safety perspective was that path where you have hundreds of kids, and I'm not exaggerating, and you know this, Steve, hundreds of kids that go from Lake Drive, go up those steps or come down Hoyt Street and go, there's a contiguous sidewalk. And if you ask Principal Blakely, she praises that there's contiguous sidewalk on the south side of the school as well. My kids don't go there, but I know this is what's being said to the local Holmes community. You are now disrupting that with the service road. And to suggest that there would never be an instance where there's traffic going on that service road that wouldn't be crossing the path of where children could be walking back and forth, I think is a little bit nonsensical. So I just want to make sure that, you know, from our perspective, there's a real safety concern with that service road on top of everything else. The other topic I wanted to address is parking. I don't actually know where parking stands. It looks like there's still plans to add all of the parking, the 95 spaces or whatever it is. Back in October, I think it was, it might have been November, we submitted a document that showed we literally, just some neighbors randomly, took pictures of the parking lot every day for over 2 weeks consecutively, and then we just stopped. We could have kept going to this day. There were probably 12 to 15 parking spaces available. I walked by there today coming off the train at Glenbrook. There were 10 to 12 parking spaces available, and there was a queue of cars sneaking around the parking lot. Nobody was in the parking, and there were cars on Lake Drive. That habit won't change if you add parking. So the question to me would be, especially on the north side, why would you go forward with that parking today when, 1, it's not needed, 2, the town is paying consultants for forecasts of student population, and there's no forecast for an increase in student population. So we've spent the money for, you know, professional input, but yet we're going to ignore it potentially. So there's no need for future. And then on top of that, why is that attached to this current plan? There's nothing about those north spots that, by the way, would take out 3 mature trees and a lot of green space that are required as part of the broader plan. So I'll stop there, but obviously those two elements that were originally addendums, I think, haven't been fully addressed by the plan. Thank you.
Can I just ask you one quick second? If you look behind you, the top of that thing, that's where those, are they 9 or 10 parking spaces going to be?
Yeah, this is where I'm talking. So there's 3 mature trees right here.
Right.
And this is.
I'm sorry,
in
could you
fact-
pick up the microphone, because
I'm
it's,
sorry.
it's quite all right. I appreciate it, thank you.
Yep. Let's think that through. Yeah, I mean, these are the ones that I'm keyed on right now.
Great.
Again, I don't know why that's attached to the rest of this. And I think that, one, yes, there are the stairs here. There's a small lip from the curb. But clearly, this is a lot of impervious space that I would think jeopardizes, that's not my property, but jeopardizes that and would create liability for the town.
Yeah, that's John Mandel's house.
And two, it just complicates the whole flow of traffic right here. And I think, I wasn't here for the last P&Z, but I think that was actually addressed by a third party. So I think you're compounding the problem, you're not helping the problem. I don't know why we're holding to trying to increase the parking. It feels like a check the box exercise, just don't want to be disparaging, but that's what it feels like to me. So,
And
thanks for
the
your
other
time.
piece is the staircase, the kids that walk up Lake, right?
Yeah.
They go on the staircase that's in that northwest corner.
Yeah, the
right there.
staircase would be right here.
There's nothing that's changing about that, right?
Nothing changing there. What I'm talking about though is that flow of traffic of children today will have to go across what is now a roadway,
Okay.
which doesn't happen today.
Right now, there's 2 Jersey barriers or what do you call them? Mafia blocks that sit there. There's 3 of them that block you from going down. That's what they're called, right?
Yeah, and when the home was there, as you know, there was one homeowner
Right.
that did everything in her power to avoid going in and out when kids were around. If you have a delivery truck that got caught on 95 and shows up when they show up, he's gonna try to get in there regardless of kids or whatever traffic's there.
That's an operational thing from the school perspective, because in the other schools, we have the same issue. And there's no deliveries or no using of that driveway at a certain time. I get it. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they can't use it, when the kids are coming in.
Yeah, I think it's hard to make it foolproof and eliminate that risk entirely, and I don't think it's a necessary service road.
Because
At a minimum, I think it could be a temporary service road if it was deemed absolutely critical for the construction, but I don't think it needs to be a permanent one. I think it would be a shame to build across that topography, eliminate all those trees for a service road. Granted, I'm sure it creates some complexity in terms of getting some materials back there, but you have to weigh all the costs involved, I think.
Yeah, the other thing, I'm going to ask Chris to comment on the 99 parking spaces, because I think that's a thing across the whole thing. And then Joe, if you could just comment on the change in grade from the high to the low of that one section and how that's being feathered in. That's all.
Thank you.
No problem.
And if you also wouldn't mind just highlighting landscaping installations in that particular area that he's talking about.
I'll
What would be
let
added?
Chris Price, co-chair of the HHR Building Committee. I'll let Eric comment on landscaping specifically. The parking is one of the things that was specifically mandated by the ed specs to rationalize parking and to have number of parking spaces consistent among all the elementary schools. And so 95 was the number that was circled for that. Likewise, we've gotten input that there's numbers of times where there's no parking available at homes. So I guess it depends kind of when you look. On the service road, one option could be, again, it's operational, but we can certainly talk about a gate that closes during school hours. The fact is, right now, deliveries are done with a bus loop in and into the back of the school, right? And to the point that a delivery truck could show up in the middle of the day, a delivery truck could show up during recess, and I'm sure the school has largely avoided having that happen. So I don't think the service road changes that aspect of it at all. It's something that the school district in particular thought was pretty important to have 360-degree access around the school. With that, I would turn it over to Eric did you have another
Can I
question?
just make one comment?
Oh, that's good. Just to read, that we talked about this 360 thing multiple times.
Correct.
And we're doing that at all the other 2 new schools,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
I mean, I've been to the high school, yeah, you can't get back past the tennis courts, but I think the other school said that. That's a safety thing that came from
Oxbridge
Spec
has,
City?
yeah, Oxbridge has it, and the plan is that Royal and Hindley have it or will have it supplemented.
Okay, so all 4 elementary schools.
Landscaping. And we can talk a little bit about, because we did do that with ARB, net increase of trees.
No, all I was gonna say, Steve, real
No,
quick,
Hold on one
you
second,
have to
hold on
come
one
to the
second. Let him
microphone.
go.
it's just on the delivery plan, I don't think
You wanna
that's
say
No,
actually
we
correct.
can't, I can't pick you up when you speak in the
One at a time. Go
audience.
ahead, Ed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you just take out the 3 trees on the north, right? And then a couple, and a handful of trees on the other spot.
So this is the existing site plan. These trees that are around the perimeter right here, the trees that are in front of the building and the trees that are immediately adjacent, and the people that are looking, I'm referring to the trees that are Xed out in red, immediately adjacent to and just to the north of the building and where the trailers are, modular building is. Those trees are all coming down because of the addition, not actually because of the service drive. I'd say probably the 3 on the far left would be coming down because of the service drive. The balance of those would be in the footprint of the proposed addition. Where this service drive is coming around, and I guess you can see it in the proposed, that's in the same location from where the existing Curtis driveway is that descends down. Our driveway does descend down. It doesn't go down as steeply, and then it has to go back up. So I think it goes down about 3 feet, descends. We are infilling, as he mentioned, and then we're turning left and we're ascending back up. So I think we go down 3 feet, we come back up about 4 feet. And yes, we have to create a berm to the north and to the west to create that. But you can also see that we're proposing new trees all along the west and a little bit on the north side on that berm itself to provide new screening. And actually, where those trees are, today there might be a couple scraggly ones, but most of it there isn't anything because it's the existing driveway, the remnants of the Curtis driveway that goes down and turns to the left, and it's where the deer hang out back there, and there's a few old trees, there's fairly small trees there. But we're adding a significant increase in trees from what currently we're taking down in the area where the berm is. As I said, most of the trees that are coming down because of the addition, not because of the service road.
But then putting in, the new trees there are on the north side of the new service drive.
That's right.
And just to say it again, right now where there's one tree that's there, it's kind of on the corner, that's right near where the backup generator is, right? Are you relocating the backup
Yes, we
generator?
are. And I didn't mention that during
Right,
here. Okay. So here you can see in light blue, right up against the north side of the cafeteria is the existing generator.
Yep.
That generator is proposed to be relocated to the other side of where that service road is, and we need to do that at the beginning so that we can have that construction access just to the south of that generator. And that's the final location for the generator.
okay.
You can actually see there's some existing trees that are right along the parking lot, just to the west of the parking lot. All those trees are existing to remain. And you can see that area just to the west of those trees, or just to the west, or in this image, just above where the generator is, that's an open, it used to be sort of, that's where the house was, so it was an open field, and now it's just kind of overgrown and has a mound of dirt there.
And that generator, how far is that from Mr. Lindell's house, approximately? It's not against his fence, because I was there this morning, it turns on every Tuesday at 8 a.m.
It's 80? I'd hate to give you a number, but it's
But
about
it's
100
not-
feet.
Yeah, okay. It's,
I mean, if you look at parking spaces, they're 9 feet, and so it looks like there's probably, it'd be large enough for about 11 parking spaces, so that's
Okay.
about 100 feet.
that's legit. Okay. There's no setback requirements for generators, are there?
There are.
What is
In
it?
this case, it would be, might be 25 feet.
The setback's 25 feet from Mr. Lindell's house?
That's true.
Okay, and it's about 100?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Way to go. Thanks a lot, Eric. You're good, right, Chris?
Thanks, sorry.
So those trees we're talking about that are next to the generator are coming down for the school expansion, not the road. If you flip back to, well, you have to flip back to the other one.
Yeah.
You want me to help you out there?
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, I think what you're saying, Steve, is, you know, the school building is expanding here and then the road is coming through here. I'm just saying, obviously, there is incremental, you know, mature tree, and I don't know what the cutoff is for what counts or doesn't count in the math, but it's a certain diameter.
Right.
There's a lot of trees that I bet are a half-inch diameter or less than that you're gonna lose. But anyway,
Right.
the only thing I want to clarify that Mr. Price said is, and I'm not saying I'm 100% accurate on this, I have never seen delivery go this way. Delivery always goes here and parks in front of the school.
Well, I've seen them go the other way, because that's where the double gate is.
Well, that's where garbage disposal
Right,
goes.
yeah.
But during the school day, you'll see delivery trucks pull
Yeah.
up here at 9 AM, and that's where they stay. So my point is, again, you're not accessing anywhere where there's kids going back and forth.
Right, that's the
But-
Cisco truck that goes there in the morning.
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen it. Okay.
Thank
God bless you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak to this application? Please. State your name and address was helpful for the record.
Name is Marion, M-A-R-I-A-N, and I live at 2 Lake Drive. I've been living in that house for 38 years. I've seen a lot of changes go on. One of my concerns is making all those parking spaces. And now you're saying that they're all going to be for staff. Has anyone ever considered using the front of the building? You're no longer going to be using that as an entrance. It's just sitting there with no use, except for a little pathway. Why couldn't you put those parking spaces there for staff? And you would eliminate having to have more parking spaces in that parking lot already, which again, I don't think that you need them. There seems to be plenty of space. And quite honestly, on the 2 or 3 nights that there's open house or a Christmas show or whatever, they're all parking on Lake Drive and on Phillips Lane. They're not parking in there. And those, they're not gonna wanna park in there because they're not gonna be able to get out if they have to wait and keep going around and around. The other thing is that the service road, I don't understand why you're concentrating this entire project in sort of one corner. You're talking about the drive, you know, putting in parking spaces, putting in that road. You have kids that have, ever since I've lived there, come up that road and go onto those steps and go across to school. You have kids whose parents stop in front of my house to let their children go up those stairs instead of being with them on Hoyt Street. I just feel that at some point with all of this going on and trucks coming and going, there's gonna be a horrible accident. You've got everything concentrated in one small area. And I don't think it's necessary after the construction is over to have that road. That school's been there for I don't know how many years. They've never had a road. They've never needed a road. So to now suddenly have to put in a road that quite honestly, after the construction is done, after 2 or 3 years, no one's gonna use that. So just do a temporary road with plans to not have it once all of this is over with. But again, you're just putting everything in this one corner of the school, except for some of the parking spaces on the loop. And I just think people need to think about the whole process. I mean, Hoyt Street is gonna be clogged up with trucks going in on that service road. It's already clogged up during school, beginning and ending. So is that not going to happen once, you know, the hours at, say, 8:30 to 9:30 when the kids are coming to school, and 2:30 to 4:30 when they're coming out? Are there going to be trucks coming in and out at those times, or does it stop? So, thank you.
Great, thank you. Would anybody else, please? There we go. There's another great neighbor. So we could just state your name and address for the record if you don't mind.
Like that. This one's the post.
Hi, good evening. John O'Neill, O''N''E''I''L''L,
Thank you.
25 Phillips Lane. I live on the western side of the school, and I'm going to focus on the stormwater management, if I may. It was mentioned that the 12-inch drain cover, it's right behind my backyard, and I've cleared that out. It's much larger than 12 inches, and it does not hold the water. You're talking about elevations over by the playground that are actually higher than where that storm drain is, and it all flows to there. The path that goes up to the school in my backyard is my yard, has washed out 10 times in the past 30 years we've lived there. Our kids have gone through all the school systems. I'm not against this proposed addition. Just concerned about the stormwater management. If the pipes were clean, they haven't done their job now. If the pipes could handle the volume, now they are not handling it currently. And I know that you've made mention of it. The berm is not 5, 6, 7 feet over there. It's a couple of feet. It's like an overflowing bathtub on a bad day.
Down the stairs?
Down the stairs,
Okay.
yeah, down that path. Has washed out that entire thing to the bottom with all the gravel. Neighbors, we've all rebuilt it a few times, 6, 7 times in the 30 years. So that is a concern. My other concern is the stormwater holding tanks. I've spoken to some builders who have said it's good in theory, only if the soil beneath it is porous. Now, how deep will those tanks be? And has that terrain been looked at, researched? Because, again, only good if porous. And that's truly the main concerns. You had mentioned maybe some upgraded trenching along the edge of the fence line. Great idea, but that was a couple of meetings ago. I don't know if that stands in your final plan. Increasing the volume to that one drain in the entire rear end of that field. I think there needs to be some research done on whether maybe some more drains are needed. Because again, it sort of runs counterintuitively back toward the school and back down into the woodland area to the north of the school. So again, there are 4 or 5 houses that abut that property. It's in blue, and which concerns me because that looks like a lake backing up to our yard, but we're 20 feet below that elevation easily. And that would be my concerns, that those things are addressed, looked at a little bit deeper, and that those land underneath wherever your storage tanks are going is researched.
Okay.
Okay?
That's those staircases, is that between you at 25 and 27?
25 and 27, yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Over here, down in this area, right? Is that
Yep,
the western
I know.
side? Yep.
Yeah, no.
You're probably pretty familiar with them, although it is well hidden.
Only certain people know about it.
It's wonderful for the kids down in
Yeah.
Lower Phillips to get up
Yeah, exactly.
and through there.
Yep.
And we do not mind the foot traffic whatsoever. It's just okay.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So can I ask one question about that? Because it sounds like the berm is high enough. Is the water going right where the pathway is? Is that how the water is escaping the property?
It sneaks underneath too, the fence. It just gets so permeated over there. I've sent pictures, I know, at the outset of this to you of some of the flooding. In 1957, there was a hurricane, and there are photographs of people in the news up on that field that had shown us years ago.
But does it feel like the water's going over the berm, or is the water just pretty
It's
much
two
going?
different spots.
It
The
washes
drain-
it down the path. The path is probably the lowest level.
Yeah.
How's it going uphill, though?
The drain is, the drain's between pretty much 23 and 25. Like I said, it's north of third base.
Mm-hmm.
And then his house is, what is it?
Directly behind that drain.
It's, no, the stairs are there. The stairs will be between your house, the drain's further
27.
south. Yeah.
Yes.
So there's a difference
north.
between the two things.
Mm-hmm.
I just want,
All right,
Joe,
so
you-
I'm going to ask Joe to come up here.
Yeah, me too.
Maybe there's a way of addressing through a trench drain that cuts across where most of that water comes, that has a better opportunity of capturing it, putting it into that pipe, and getting it away.
you can
But-
go out, you can go out.
But he's the expert at this.
So Joe, this is a picture of the manhole sewer cover, okay? That's it, okay?
Okay.
That's it. So it's not 12 inches, it's like what he said, it's 24.
Yeah.
So you have to tell us how big this is gonna be, and then what he's saying is,
Yeah, Joe, this is the pipe here. We have 12-inch PVC, see that? And there's that.
Pipe terminates the parking lot.
Okay.
right, yeah. 12 inch PVC, so the difference between his house and the 12-inch thing, the question is, can you put another drain in front of that staircase? So instead of going down the stairs to the guy's house, or between two houses, you go into the drain, then to the other drain, and then to the PVC pipe.
Okay, sure. For the record, Joseph Canis. First of all, to answer the question about the size of the grate that we're putting there, we're putting in a double DOT grate. So the typical DOT grate is probably about, I would say, 24 inches long, maybe 18 inches wide. We're putting in two of those side by side, so it's double that area.
North and south or east and west?
North and south.
Okay.
Right, but to your point, we can add another drain out there. You know, that's certainly something we can do. We can do that as a condition of approval in front of those stairs.
Yep.
The other thing that we are adding back there, it's on the plans, I did not mention in my presentation, is that we are adding a curtain drain along the length of the property, along the west side of the field. And what that'll do is, it's crushed stone up to the surface, water flowing over the crushed stone, goes down to that crushed stone envelope and is taken into the drain here. You can actually see it's called out here with the UD for under drain.
Oh, great. I didn't
Yeah,
know
so
that.
it'll flow south into the basin, into the new basin, and flow north into the new basin.
Oh, I got you. You didn't tell us that. Okay, so you're putting in a what's it called again?
Curtain drain.
Curtain drain.
So it starts at the upper class playground.
Right, it starts at the upper class playground, heads south to that basin, and also starts at the southwest corner of the property and heads north.
Okay, and that line between 27 and 25, that's Mr. O'Neill's house right there.
That's correct.
That's where the staircase is.
Right, and we can add and the nice thing about that is we can add a drain right on top of that and connect it to that proposed under drain or curtain drain, and then it'll connect directly to that catch basin.
Okay, that's great. Okay with you?
The other question that was asked was about the soil testing beneath
perk test.
beneath the proposed infiltration system. As part of our due diligence for the project, we did excavate a test pit, and we did perform an infiltration test. And the soils there are suitable for that. And when we do these infiltration tests, it tells us how fast the soil will soak up the water. As a factor of safety, we only take half of that rate in our design.
Okay.
Okay?
So it's called the perk test is what Mr. O'Neill was
That's
talking
correct.
about, and you did that.
We
and
did that.
You guys say there's like great soils out there, that's what you're saying.
Right, exactly. And we look for is we look, how deep is bedrock out there, and it's really down low. We also look to make sure that we're not in groundwater, because we don't want groundwater coming into the system.
Okay,
And we're
do
above
you
that.
mind just going back to your slide where you have the
Sure.
picture of the Coltex? Because the top of the Coltex is gonna be 3 feet below surface, right?
In this case, it's deeper. We have more cover over here, but we're going to be, total depth is about, I would say, 9 feet down to the bottom of the system.
So you're digging a 9-foot hole,
Right.
putting these things in the ground. How tall are those blue things?
These, I believe we're using the 360s out here, so they're 3 feet tall.
So you're digging down 9 feet, you're putting, what, 2 feet of crushed stone? Then those things?
Right,
4
yeah,
feet
so
of dirt on
basically,
top of it?
it's a foot of crushed stone on the bottom. Then you
Just
have your
point to it
3
on the screen.
Yeah, a foot of crushed stone on the bottom.
Yep,
Right, then you have your 3-foot-high chamber.
Yep.
And you have a foot on top of it. And what you can see here on this detail.
foot of rocks, right?
Of crushed stone, right,
Right.
exactly. And then, there is a maximum depth for it, but that, you could put like 12 feet of cover over that we're providing.
And then how much topsoil on top of the rocks?
Probably about 6 feet, right? Maybe 5. 4, okay. Between 4 and 5, depending on where you are, because the elevation changes
Okay,
across the field, how it's pitched.
so these things are 9 feet in the ground. That's a big hole. Okay,
Yeah, that it is.
go ahead.
What's the life expectancy of a Coltech system like this, right? Like, the soil is probably permeable now.
Right.
But after now you placing all this water here, whatever the 80 some odd thousand gallons of it,
69,000.
69,000, 70. At some point, that porous dirt that can absorb it is just going to become like clay, right? After some number of years, it'll
Not
start to
necessarily,
fail.
right? It'll keep moving through there. What happens is, the greatest risk is if sediment or debris gets in there, right? Because that'll clog it up. And what we've done upstream of it, immediately upstream, is we have a swirl concentrator, which provides pre-treatment to keep that debris from washing in there. In terms of structural integrity, these systems have been around. They've been proven. They drive trucks on them. So they're durable, and just like anything else, it really speaks to the maintenance. The more you maintain it, the better your outcome is going to be.
So if they didn't maintain it at all, and there was no swirl and a bunch of sediment get in, then does it become more like a French drain that every 20 some odd years you got to dig it all up and then re-put the stone in and then replace it all and then resettle it?
Right. Yeah. If you think about it, like a septic leaching field, if you don't pump your tank, eventually it's going to it's going to fail and clog.
Okay.
And there's a stormwater management plan with this application, right?
That's right. As part of the application, there is a stormwater management and operations plan that's included in the appendix of the engineering report that gets filed on the land records.
Okay, great, thank you.
Right, thank you.
Anybody else want to speak to this application? Please.
Thank you.
Name and address for the record would be great.
Yes, Susan Calabrese. Could I have that slide back that was on the other
Whatever
one?
one
Could you
you
spell
want.
your last name for me, please? Calabrese. Thank you so much. 41 Lake Drive. Thank you. That's a good.
You're down by,
I am at
Karen Brooks.
point 0. And.
Okay, could you take the mic, please?
Oh, yeah.
The little
Thank
pinky
you.
one. There you go.
Appreciate it.
Sorry. Yes, I'm at the bottom, and I've lived there for 53 years. And I would just like to testify to all this information about water going down the hill into the pond, into the Norotan River. There's no connection. This used to be a quarry, a gravel pit, and they had water, obviously, and it's spring fed. It's not fed from a river or anything. All the storm overflow drains on Phillips and Lake and the school go downhill to the pond, underground, above the ground, however they get there, okay? Never had a problem, but we don't have any storm drains down here from the end of Phillips Lane and the bottom of Lake. And during the storm, I know it was 100, a 500, whatever Ida was, there was 4 feet of water in the middle of the road where there are storm drains. The Norotan River is all behind here. It's behind these houses. We're all in a flood zone, whatever, A, B, we're on the ocean. That's what they told me. One time my flood insurance company said I needed storm shutters. And I said, you gotta come drive down here.
It's Lake Drive.
It's called Lake Drive, but it's really a pond.
You're on Lake
It's all for
Drive.
real estate value, Lake Drive. Actually, a house on Phillips turned it into Lake Drive, just for that reason. Anyway, there's open space, and the Norokan River, if you look on whatever map you look on, it goes in and out of Stamford, Darien, New Canaan, all over the place, right?
Right,
Well,
yeah.
across the street from my house, there's a house. And the topography kind of goes up, and the exit, culvert, whatever they wanted to call it, that's supposed to be submerged in the pond, is above it. It's never been submerged since I've lived there. And it doesn't go anywhere but to the other side of the road. I think the developer said, this is a good thing, put this in here, make it look with a dotted line on the map, that it goes to the river. But I found out we can't go to the river because it's Stamford. You can't have all the water in this neighborhood draining into Stamford's river. So that was my biggest concern, because every time I see someone saying, oh, and it goes down the hill and down the gully, and it's, where does it go? And again, first time ever we got flooded was Ida. And it's because we have a room that's on ground level, but it was ground water. The lake didn't splash over on, it did to the road, kind of up to the road, but mostly we have groundwater, and more houses are being torn down and built. And they're putting in patios and outdoor fireplaces and double driveways, and they're putting the little version of your Cultec,
Yep.
Cultec, a little box in their driveway with little squares with the holes in it. And that water is supposed to let it, their storm drains go into the driveway and then go wherever. We have very, very porous ground down our end. There are definitely places like the school that has rock underneath. And I always thought we did because I had a crawl space and nothing ever went in. So I must be on a ledge. But we found out we're not. Anyway, so my concern again is impervious, if that's the word. Trees are being cut down, retaining walls are being, stone walls are being built to keep this water out. And all I'm seeing is 69,000 gallons heading down. I love homeschool. It's a great neighborhood. Our grandkids play there on the weekends. They don't even live in Darien. And we play on it. I love it. But I really think everything is, as someone said, checking boxes. I don't know about Cultec systems. I heard there was some playing field upstate that after a few years caved in and they had to do it all over again. So I'm not sure we have all the facts. I don't know when it was invented, shall we say? But I looked it up someplace and it was for shopping centers and things like that. So I just want to make sure everyone takes into consideration the neighborhood and the fact that we have no escape. And we may never get a 200-year storm, but we get enough rain the last couple of days that everything was soggy. And again, more and more houses, even on Phillips, some lady took down, I don't know, 20 trees, kind of next door to John, right? And now there's a nice sliding hill.
You
if
need
wanna
to
go sled
put the
riding.
microphone near
Sorry.
your mouth, thank you.
I think I'm talking loud enough. Am I not
you're
loud
all right.
enough? Everyone tells me I speak so loudly. Anyway, so now we have a nice hill, bald hill, for water to come down. And John's next door neighbor, literally next to him, if you have you ever been out to the property? You've been there, right? And so you've walked in the back, like where John lives, where that drain is? Yeah, so if you walk to the edge of that property, and John has a nice fence there, it goes off a cliff, literally. Okay, it goes just like this, and down here. So if you even had a drain here and a berm, you'd have to have a 7-foot berm probably to keep the water out, or a dam. But my other point is there's no exit to the pond, and even if we had one, you'd have to propel the water out of it, because the land goes up. Once you go outside onto the street, my neighbors across the street are higher than me. So I don't know how it's supposed to go up and then down into the Norokan River.
Yeah.
But I know the last meeting that I came to, everyone says, oh my gosh, the topography, the elevation, we didn't know that, let's hold it open. So I'm just saying, between now and the end, I think you can get going on your construction, but I think we've got to really, really take into consideration all the new builds, $2 million houses at the bottom of Lake Drive.
My friend sold one of them.
Oh,
Right across from my
probably.
house.
Like I said, they're changing the name of the
They're
street.
humongous. I know.
Anyway, thank you, I appreciate you listening.
Thank you. Chris, again, that's the same as Finley. It's part of a bigger project.
Yeah, if I could just say one.
Please.
Yeah, Chris Price again from the HHR. One thought on the parking. that we were discussing just a second ago, is I think it's important to get the additional parking is in our application. The additional parking doesn't have to be built presently, right? But we do think it's important that it be part of the application, that it be approved as part of the application. We're taking that potential additional impervious surface into account in doing the stormwater design. We can certainly consider staging, adding the additional parking if it's determined that, if there's a thought that it may not be needed, and we can do it at a later time. But we do think it's important that it stays in the application and is approved as part of the application.
Did we do that at Royal too? The same, similar question at Royal?
Didn't we put striping around the front of it?
Something like that? Yeah, that was on the other part. I've been to the school a million.
That's correct. At Royal, we said that we could possibly do the one that's by the intersection now, and the one that's part of the larger footprint of the parking lot. We could probably do it at a later date. If the school district determines that it's not needed, then they don't construct it.
Yeah.
But they've asked for approval for both.
Yeah.
Understood.
If they do that, would you also hold off the sidewalk redesign on the back of those spaces as well?
Correct.
Yeah.
Right, so
It would
those
all
two
be
would
part
come
of
in,
the same
you
project.
wouldn't build the sidewalk and then like have it be in the middle of like, some, got it.
Same condition at Royal.
Okay. That's the same thing.
But that doesn't help us.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to the school a million times, and I've parked in those fire lanes for 4 years. I never got a ticket, but I parked there. Anybody else want to speak to the application? Go ahead.
Couple more minutes.
What was your address again? You on here?
11 Lake.
11.
Just want to question the logic of that, and I understand it was in the Board of Ed spec, but I think we're all realists here. Once you put it in the plans, there's an economic incentive for somebody to put that parking in place. And so your regulator is right now. Your regulator is to take it out of the plan, justify it at a later date, and do it at a later date, because it's really not attached, especially the north spots. It's not attached to anything else. The reality is you wouldn't change a thing about everything else you're doing with or without those spots. So my world of experience is once you tip that over, it's going to happen, and I would regulate it now. I'd say don't put it in now and justify it later.
But you've never parked in that fire lane where I park?
No, and I can tell you, there's
park there all
parking
the
all
time.
the way up and down Lake Drive.
Oh, I know.
Because of ease of access. People don't want to be in those parking spots. That's why there's 12
Oh, I
to 15
know.
spots available every day.
Veterans Day, I park there all the time. So
Well,
Gene
people-
Coyle?
No, well, I live on Lake Drive.
I know
need
you do.
to.
I never parked on Lake Drive. I didn't want it because that was Craig Flaherty's house and the other lady's house.
Yeah, well, I
you
think
talking
just,
about?
living for, you've
Sorry.
heard from people who have lived on Lake Drive and people on Phillips for decades.
Yeah.
You put those parking spots in, they're gonna be vacant. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Rich.
you.
Anybody else want to speak to this application? I think we're done, right?
I just have one last.
Go ahead, I'm sorry, go right ahead.
Everybody's tired. Mr. Canis, if you could just talk to us about that pipe. I had the impression that the outflow side was underwater and being clogged with sediment. Sorry, different slide.
Are you talking about the pipe to lake? To the lake or
From the
current
lake
grade?
on lake
Okay.
to the river.
Okay.
So we've heard testimony from a neighbor that that pipe goes nowhere.
So,
What's up in here?
Sorry.
Right. It's not our property.
My understanding of, again, Joe Canis for the record, my understanding of the connection between the pond and the river is that the culvert, is this is what DPW had told us, is that the connection really here has been plugged, whether it's on the upstream end or the downstream end, but it's not a truly functioning connection.
Okay, but there is a connection there that.
There is a connection.
excuse me, on any town map, there's like a little dotted line right there.
Yeah.
And then a little dotted line over here. But like I said, my property, it goes uphill, so I don't know how I'm supposed to go anywhere. And they put in sewers and water mains over it. But nobody will go to the other side of it on this property to see that there's nothing there.
Right.
Because this guy, we went to the river to look for the exit, there's no exit. Believe me, I've been on it.
Right, and it could be a situation where, you know, I don't see any indication of an easement here. It could be one of those nebulous pipe things where nobody really knows where it goes. You know, the people who knew about it, you know, have since moved on.
Just show the end of this school property line with your finger.
But the end of the school property is up here, and we've documented that we're not increasing peak flow or runoff from the school site. So we're not, we won't be worsening conditions there. We're actually, it'll be an improvement in terms of what the school contributes there. But overall, the home site, I believe, is about 8 acres plus or minus, right? You know, the watershed of the river, you know, as was testified, extends, you know, through Stamford all the way up into New Canaan. So that's a much larger watershed area. You got a lot more water coming down this way than you have coming from the school.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
One more point about the carbon.
No,
Yep,
you have
come
to
over.
come up to the microphone.
Yeah, to the microphone.
Sorry.
We're gonna
Okay.
get you to meet Ed
Okay.
Gentile.
Just another fact about the exit of the water. We had the state of Connecticut come down because we wanted to keep the pond aerated and looking good. We were allowed to put carp in it. For many, many years, we pay to have carp put into the lake.
Yep.
So we know it doesn't go anywhere. So if anyone has any questions about that, I can be the authority on that. Again, there's nothing to propel it, and the exit thing that everyone's talking about that was blocked or whatever, it just caved in. It's a 24-inch cement sewer pipe, right? And like I said, it's a dotted line, and I had to go through all kinds of departments. I'm personal friends with Ed Gentile.
Yeah,
a few
he's
people,
your guy.
Woody, and a few people downtown. But anyway, Woody came out, the environmental guy came out, he goes exactly what you said. They did a couple funny things back in the day when they wanted to get permission. And now, you know, not everybody gets permits for anything, but if you want to buy it from me, you can have it, if that'll help with your project. There's 4 other houses on the pond. But we're responsible. If anybody drowns in that thing, it's our problem.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you.
We want to keep it healthy and staying low.
Thank you. Okay. You're done, right?
Good.
Okay. I think Eric and Chris, I think we're finished, right? Any closing comment?
You need the extension,
Right, we need the extension from Jeremy. Let's go ask for that.
Well, the deadline to close the hearing is today, but you still have 65 days to make a decision if the hearing closes tonight.
65, oh, because this one opened later than the other two. Okay.
Correct, and this is a regrading permit, because the other schools did not have regrading.
Okay.
So this one, because it had a little more regrading, triggered section 850 of the zoning regulations.
So if we close it right now, we don't need an extension.
That's correct.
Okay, that's fine.
We're still on the same schedule as the other two in terms of hoping to have a resolution so that we can go through the town and state permit process.
That's correct. We are aware of your desire for us to move as fast as possible.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that said, I think the applicant's finished, I think the neighbors are finished, the consultants are finished, the peer review guys are finished, you're finished. With that said, I would entertain a motion to close. Adam makes a motion, looking for a second. Mike makes a second, all those in favor?
Okay, the hearing closed then.
Hearing's closed. Okay, we will deliberate this
Next week.
Next week, okay? And you'll probably have a resolution, if all thing goes, in 2 weeks. Right?
That's the goal.
That's the goal. All right, so don't worry about your 65 days, I kept 14.
Thank you for your consideration and time tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Go ahead. Fire.
We are on the record.
Fantastic. Thank you. That closes the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting. Just for the record, this letter is in the.
Right, the ARB letter is in the record. Actually, it's a report from the ARB, so it's in all 3 files, Hinley, Royal, and Holmes.
You got this by email over the weekend on Thursday, and you got another hard copy sitting on your desk tonight. Okay, that's that. Okay, general meeting time permitting. If you don't mind, can I open all three of these?
Sure.
Yeah, great. General meeting, time for meeting. First one, mandatory referral, number 1-2023, Board of Selectmen, Hinley Elementary School, 10 Nearwater Lane, proposal for submittal improvements, for substantial improvements to town property. Deadline to issue report is February 8th, 2023. Next one, mandatory referral number 2, 2023, Board of Selectmen, Royal Elementary School, 133 Mansfield Avenue, proposal for substantial improvements to town property. Deadline to issue report, February 8th, 2023. The last one, mandatory referral number 3, 2020-2023, Board of Selectmen, Holmes Elementary School, 8 and 30 Hoyt Street, proposal for substantial improvements to town property. Deadline to report issue should be February 8th, 2023. In your packets, we have 3 draft reports. At our last meeting, we instructed staff to write positive reports. In your package, you got 3 reports. Mine were stapled together. The first one was Holmes, the next one was Royal, and the last one was Hindley. I read them. I found one typo in the Hoyt Street report. If you go to the second paragraph, it says in support of the purchase of the town. That's supposed to be proposal.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, they match up in the other 2. I looked at them all the names and address and everything. These wordings, I think, are 99.9% exactly the same. It's the only error I found in this whole thing.
I think Adam had a couple of comments.
Questions, comments from this side? Good, sir.
I gave them to Fred earlier, but just some trivial periods out of it. Some of them, so the first thing I noticed too, after I did a second pass in the train, in the packet, it says Hoyt is 18 and 32, but in this it just says 18.
Yep.
Where Mansfield is 10 and Hindley's 10 and Mansfield's 33. So I don't know if we need to include that in the top line.
Yes, you can.
Right?
Yep.
Mine were just like mostly in the third paragraph on the, let's see, this is Hoyt, and on Hindley, after the word purposes, it's quotations and then a period, instead of period and then quote. On the Royal, in the same paragraph, you say on page 116, and in the other 2 you say page 116. And then finally, on Hindley, you omit the sentence, also on page 116, it stated that there are significant HVAC issues. And that is not on that one.
Right, because the town plan only
doesn't have it. I didn't have the town plan in front of me. And the only other thing I would say is that between Holmes and Royal, that final sentence differentiates between the 2, where one says the 2016 town plan also notes significant HVAC issues, and the other one says also on page 116, it is stated that there are significant HVAC issues. I don't know if we wanted to align those sentences, but they're all basically trivial. They don't really alter the content of anything.
So I think that falls into the area of typos, scrivener's errors, and errors.
Yep.
You want to just give us what your markups are?
Yeah.
And we'll give it directly to him?
But the content of them I thought was fine.
Okay, there you go. Typos, scrivener's errors, comments. Mike, you good?
I'm great.
George, you good?
Sir.
Amy, you good?
Yep.
Okay.
The only question I would ask, Steve, is we noted earlier tonight that Holmes School, we're going to be merging 3 lots together. Do we want to reference that in this referral report?
Sure. We can do that if you want.
We can just add a sentence.
I don't know, is that part of the town plan of conservation?
Well, you know, it's interesting because we talk about in the town plan, I don't have it in front of me.
I guess it would probably fall into like conservation of open space, because you get a uniform set of setbacks for one larger parcel. I don't know.
Yeah, or we could just leave it out, but.
It's got to be in the resolution, but it's
Right.
not going to be in this.
Keep in mind,
mandatory
the
referral.
commission's going to issue specific written decisions on each of these. These are just the reports that are required by state statute relative to consistency with the town plan.
Then keep it out.
Okay, so we'll take it
Keep
out.
the subdivision portion out, because it's not in the town plan.
We'll do that as part of the.
There's nothing in town.
Unless there's something in the town plan though, because I do like your idea of merging lots.
Yeah.
Right? Like if someone's gonna develop consistently 3 separate lots, they need to merge them.
Yeah, they didn't do it at, at Federal.
Right.
They did.
So they merged all those tax lines into one?
Yep.
Okay.
So it's up to you guys. I mean, we did,
Check the town plan, if it's in there, put it in, if
If
it's
we got
not.
something in there, I think it's something we should.
because
refer
the
to.
old town plan talked about buying the Curtis property.
Right,
Sure enough,
we
we
did that.
did, and for school purposes, which
If you find it inside the town plan, just put it in,
We'll put a sentence in.
chapter and verse, of what it is.
Got it.
Because the other one says page 116, page this, page that.
you got it.
But the referral request did not include that, I don't think, so.
Page referral request didn't include this.
That's correct.
Okay.
Whatever you want to do. I don't-
Okay. With that said, can I get a motion to approve all three referral reports in one shot? Mike makes a motion. Amy makes a second.
Yep.
All's in favor?
Great.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
That's done. Okay. Next item up for bid. Deliberations only. Site plan application number 286A, Darien Board of Education, Hanley Elementary School, 10 near Water Lane. Proposal to renovate and construct additions to Hanley Elementary School, including eliminating temporary portable classrooms, buildings, replacing the library learning commons, and correctly sizing general and special subject classrooms, upgrading building systems, and adding parking spaces to the bus loop, and perform related site development activities, including adding landscaping, plantings, restoration, adding hardscape areas, and improving stormwater management. Decision deadline is February 7th, 2023. Are we going to make that?
We will. We're going to work hard to get, depending on your comments tonight, we'll definitely get Royal on for next week.
Okay.
And try to get Henley on for next week as well.
Well, we got an extension past that one or no? Past this date? Is this the extended date or the existing date?
That's the existing date.
Okay, we got it extended then.
No, I think we
Well,
can
Chris
make
granted an extension.
for the 7th.
Whatever extension you wanted on Royal and Henley, he granted.
I'll double check.
Okay.
For the, you mean the last meeting?
Yeah. So inside your packets, we have the famous green sheet, which gives us a couple talking points to Royal Elementary School. The first half is just the notice again. The bottom half is this for both of them, you think? Or is
Yeah, I
it
think it's
just for
both of
the-
them. We wanted to kind of get your thoughts on both of them. Start with whichever one you want.
Let's do Royal first.
Okay.
'Cause I think that's kind of simpler. The only issue that I saw, or I can remember, is the parking spaces that are inside the bus loop.
Yeah, there's
Which-
parking to the west and parking to the east.
And the bus loop is by Concy's house, which is to the east, no, to the west.
To the west, that's
Okay.
correct.
There's those new parking spaces that's gonna have a, fake sidewalk behind the cars, that's where the kids walk. I think we got over that issue. They might have like stamped asphalt or something like that there, which keeps the safety thing. I think those spaces are being marked for
Staff
staff
only.
only. Yeah,
Yeah, and the dumpster's right near there as well.
the dumpster's near there. The other parking spaces that are to the east,
near
which is closer to
Mansfield Ave.
Mansfield Avenue and closer to Mike's house, those are fine. Those are the ones that they could put in at a later date, I think, or that's what I thought they were gonna do. But I think that it was pretty straightforward. The majority of the development is going north towards New Canaan. Just knocking down the old school, taking out all the temporary classrooms, put it there. The football field, I think, is gonna be out of the box for a couple of years. While this whole thing's going on. Are you a DJFL guy? Yeah. You guys planning for that?
We're done.
No.
Oh, no, I'm not on board.
Okay.
Dead player.
That's got nothing to do with us. That's, they can work that up with the school.
Okay. Yeah, I think at the hearing, I think Fred Conzi might have been the only person to speak.
Yeah, and he spoke out of turn, yeah. Just going over your bullet points, increase the size of the building, development coverage, that was all checked out, on-site traffic, pedestrian circulation, number of parking spaces, that's the 99 or 95 spaces that all 3 or 4 schools are supposed to have. They're doing the continuous loop around the building. Traffic considerations, queuing of vehicles, Greg from Hardison Hanover signed off on it. Stormwater management and drainage considerations, that was reviewed by SLR or reviewed by?
No, Craig Flaherty.
Craig Flaherty. He signed off on all of Joe's great work. Landscaping, we went over that. ARB design, we got those letters tonight. They did whatever ARB told them to do.
Blue doors, I like that. Blue doors.
Blue doors. On-site lighting, you had questions relative to lighting, I think those got answered.
Yeah.
Because that shows up in the minutes that we're gonna go over tonight. Dumpster locations, limited grading, phasing of the project, they gave us the phasing plans. I think all three schools are supposed to be done all at the same time for the 2025 or 2025, 2026 school year, because they're still constructing.
Summer of 25.
Summer 25, it's gonna be the fall of 25, 26. So this is, we're 23 now, they're building for a long time. But anything I missed, questions, comments for these guys, we have to make sure we put inside the proposal?
I mean, the only thing is if are we doing that phased parking proposal? I mean, how, I guess this is a general question, how impactful is the educational plan on our decision? I mean,
I don't think we're
obviously-
allowed to override the ed specs, because
Right.
those go up to Hartford.
Right, so we're kind of stuck with them, but do we put in language that if it's modified or some other way, that they will reduce the parking amount?
If the ed specs get reduced?
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, that's the only way they don't build it, right?
Right.
I mean, and we can't, I mean, they made an application with those spaces. I mean, I'm talking more about the application tonight, but
Right.
in general,
The gentleman that was here relative to you don't need those spaces, I disagree with him 100%. Do you need those extra 10 spaces?
and I think you stick with the ed specs, so that's
Yeah.
fine. So I don't have any issue with the parking, and I don't think you need to put any stip that they have to do it at any later date or
Right.
some other phasing part to it. Okay.
Yeah.
And we were not asked to. They specifically said, please approve it as is. And they hope they have the flexibility to do otherwise. That's their issue.
Yep.
Yeah, if they want to spend the money
Even if
later.
we went down the road, how would we determine if they're needed or not needed,
I know, it's-
right? How would we write that in?
Right, because the
can't.
traffic consultants have to say, oh, this is overflow, you don't need
Yeah.
them. They
So-
say they need them, the consultant says you need them.
Right. I don't know what kind of metric you could use to stop them and say, well, if this and this happens, then you can go and build them, otherwise you can't. Seems like it's a very difficult thing to figure out, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a slippery slope. Can I ask one general question relative to lighting? You know when we do other applications, like a BMW or Danny's Bicycle, we make the lights shut off at a certain time? They're not allowed to stay on all night long?
I think the ARB has started to get into that a little bit.
Do we still, is it the same, does school get regulated by that too, or no?
It becomes very,
The reason why I ask it, every night I drive home from work at like 10 o'clock, and the lights on home school are on. No one's ever complained, no one's ever said a word.
The exterior lights?
The lights in the parking lot.
I'd make an argument that the lights at the school should stay on almost 24 hours.
Okay.
It's just a safety issue, right? You don't want kids traipsing around the school, you don't want burglars going in this, like, I think you want, I'd make the same argument for the high school, by the way, which would probably get me lynched in town, but.
Right.
I mean, there's a huge
they like
walking,
lights. They like
there's a huge walking track there,
Right.
there's a, I mean, it's a town amenity. So
Which is different from a private parking lot
Residence,
like,
right.
like BMW, or a private parking lot like behind Danny's Bicycle and
Right.
Bruce and all that stuff.
Right,
One-
it's not public use.
I'm switching gears a little bit, but one of the things that was mentioned tonight, and I think I'd like to see in the resolutions, is so much of the commentary that we've seen, not so much for Royal, but for the other schools, are about the drainage, and to have these maintenance plans
Yep.
be registered in town records.
yes, I
File
think that's
them
going to
by
be
reference.
important, is
Yeah.
not only filing the maintenance plan in the land records,
Yeah,
but getting some written evidence from the Board of Ed,
yeah,
whether it's on
Plan
an
to do
annual
it.
basis,
yeah,
that they've done what they needed to do.
yeah. I know
Maybe
it's
every
not really
January
an
or
issue
whatever
for
the
Royals
time is.
Per se, but,
Because in each of the reports in Appendix G,
yeah,
there's a maintenance plan. Every spring, you need to do this.
yeah,
In fall, you need to clean the leaves, whatever it is, inspect this, that finding a way as part of the P and Z resolution to say,
yeah.
instead of saying, just follow the maintenance plan, it's follow the maintenance plan and give us
Do
some
it.
written evidence.
I mean, one of the neighbors said that, he's lived in the house for X years, and they're like, for example, Henley School was built 75 years ago. They may have cleaned that pipe once in 75 years. I don't really think that's acceptable.
And who does that? Is it DPW or is it?
No, it would be Board of Ed.
Who owns the pipe?
Kevin Burnett, I think is his name, has taken over as facilities guy, he runs all the schools. He has a team of
Right.
15, 20 guys that cut the lawn, shovel the snow.
Do you ever see those big vac trucks?
Yeah, I love those things.
Yeah.
Well, as
But
long as
maybe
it's
I
on,
can submit an annual report to you guys.
Yep,
as long as it's on Board of Ed property as opposed to town property.
correct.
But we're switching gears, but on Henley School, I think we've determined that pipe that goes from the border of Henley School to Pasture Lane is a school pipe.
Yeah, they can only get that far there. They can't go all the way on, all the
Correct.
way to pasture, all the way out. They can only do that first 8 feet.
Right, between the
10
one
feet of
guy's
section,
house that
yeah.
lives there, yeah.
The rest of it is on them.
So all the stuff that we saw tonight on Royal, they're only doing inside the boundaries of
Oh,
their
'cause
property.
there's an easement there. I guess the easement is with the Board of Ed.
Yeah. It's a Board of Ed, easement, Board of Ed.
Switching gears on.
Anything else on
Yeah.
Royal?
Let's just stay on Royal, I'm sorry, I switched
Yeah, I
gears.
know that too,
opened
too.
But
it
I
up.
think Amy's correct that as part of all
Yeah,
of these,
all of
I
these,
think
yeah,
that's
I'd like
important.
to see that.
Is there a drainage maintenance plan for Royal?
There's one for all of them.
Yes.
Joe, in his big reports, put together very clear what needs to be done and when.
Okay, good. So we're good, Royal, so we instruct staff to write up a
Yeah, we'll
positive
try-
report on Royal.
Yeah.
Just very quickly, going back to the on-site lighting, did we conclude that discussion? I mean, there's some question with respect to,
Everything that he's saying.
some question with regard to the amount of lighting. So, we can say that, yes, lighting needs to be on for 24 hours, but there's
I don't think you
different
mentioned
levels of lighting, right? So
I don't think you mentioned it at all.
Yeah.
I don't think you
just
mentioned it at all.
leave it out altogether.
Because we
Yeah, I
no,
wouldn't-
we
I
had no
wouldn't
neighbor
mention it.
comment, we had no
Yeah,
discussion.
I
We
don't
had
think we need to
no,
overlay
Yeah.
and insert
No.
our idea on that.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had them go from 16 feet down to 12, down to 8, and back up to whatever they did, like
Right.
Madison.
Yeah, well, I think that was part of the benefits of this, kind of with BMW and some others, that the new lighting is generally seen as less spillage, better. We've heard lots of testimony.
We have none of that here on any of these.
And
Yeah, I wouldn't- I
I
wouldn't
wish
go
I
down
had
that
the
road.
plans in front of me at the moment, but there was originally some question with regard to the location of the dumpster that they had originally proposed.
This is at Royal.
At Royal.
At Royal, right. It was, in its current condition, it's along the access driveway, right? And in what they proposed, they had put it through the gates, sort of in no man's land, on like the macadam where the children were playing around that area.
And it was gonna be fenced. They proposed a new fence around
Right,
it.
right. So I can't recall off the top of my head whether, when they revised the plans, if they moved that dumpster from the macadam area back to the drive, or
We'll
if they
figure that-
left it.
We'll figure that when we look at the draft.
Okay,
We'll figure that out.
Yeah,
It's- I'll
okay.
sort it.
okay.
Yeah, okay. Good?
Yep.
Next, Henley School. Same items. The increased size of the building, I think it's a wash in terms of impervious surface. I don't think there's any increased size of the building or development coverage. On-site traffic and pedestrian circulation and number of parking spaces, they're getting more parking spaces. At some point in time, they're extending the bus loop to get more buses off of Nearwater Drive and off of the Post Road and onto the property. This is my personal thing, and I'm going to ask you to help out on this. They said they were going to put no stopping on the Post Road, so mothers or fathers can drop off their kids on the Post Road and then scoot through that little gate. In my personal opinion, if you tell those moms or parents or whatnot that they can't stop there and they're going to get a ticket, they're going to blow a gasket.
Yeah, P&Z can't overrule the state of Connecticut or,
But who, see, that's the thing, when I asked the traffic engineer, they never went to the local traffic authority yet, which is the police department. They haven't asked them one
Right,
word.
we did send it to the local, right, Fred?
Yeah.
But he doesn't, but he didn't, the guy from, what's his name, from Ty and Bond said, no, they're not, it's not their horse, not their horse on a race.
Correct.
You're talking about on the post road.
On the
Right.
Post Road.
Which is strictly a state.
The way that I sort of would see it working is I think that the parking there, right, because we're gonna have the right turn out exit that is now sort of the gate, right, where the entrance to walk in is.
Okay.
You're not necessarily gonna see cars parking after that, where there's the turn into the church, right, of the border of the
Yep.
eastern side of the property. You may see cars back behind it from the intersection, right across from Mama Carmela's, basically
Yep.
all the way to that. if they don't put the island in the middle of the post road that we heard about at the second meeting, then the cars will park there. If they put that island in the middle of the post road there, kind of how it is at the top of Near Water, there's a little island there and it's got like a little break of a sidewalk. I use it to like run and turn around. If they put an island in the post road going east-west, that will force it to be too narrow for cars to park. Because even when you park there, 1.5 feet of your car is sticking into the post road.
Okay.
So it's not a big enough curb that the car is totally like street parking. So if you put that island in, there won't be enough room for cars to get around and people won't do it. Like the same way people don't do it kind of like at the Y. So I think that's totally dependent on that island being there, but I don't think we can say anything because it's up to the town to ticket those cars.
Right, that's, you're putting a burden on the police department. Is it no parking or no standing or no dropping off?
There's no parking there at all.
All right.
But they don't bother. People park there all the time.
But if I live on Hollow Tree Ridge Road and I'm driving up the post road heading towards Neat, and my kid goes to Henley School, can I stop at that gate and let my kid out on the right-hand side?
No.
And then keep going?
Nope. It's meant to be, the way that I sort of see it is it's meant to be the kids who walk up Old Rings End Road to the top where St. Luke's is on the right, and then make a left, and then walk down that sidewalk, and then scoot in. There's a number of kids that walk that direction every morning.
Okay.
And what you end up seeing, at least I know from the Y, is when you make that immediate left turn into the church sort of like driveway, where you're right up against the fence, there's like 4 or 5 feet of grass on the right side, like that abuts the fence. People park there a lot and then walk their kids to that gate and then let them go into the gate, turn around, get in their car, turn around, go onto the post road, make a right, like make a left there, do anything.
So they go into the church parking lot?
Oh
Okay.
yeah, you'll see like in the summer, if you drive by in the summertime when Y Camp is in session, in the middle of the day, at that time, yeah, you'll see 5 or 6 cars parked right adjacent to that fence on what is, I assume, the church lot, because there's nothing really going on at the church on like Tuesday morning at 9. And then they just turn around and you zip right out of there.
Okay. So the traffic engineer's recommendation is no parking, not no stopping, which is different. Okay, that's fine. I think we're enforcing it because they didn't consult with the police department.
Yeah, I mean, having a right turn lane out of there is a really good idea because that parking lot becomes a nightmare.
Yep.
So that certainly will absolutely improve the flow of traffic significantly. So maybe you'll get a bunch of people that don't just stop out there because they can see traffic sort of moving really quickly and you kind of get out of it. But like, I think the comments that all of the schools brought up about if we add these parking spaces outside of like the specs that parents will park and take their kid out of the car and then walk them into the school is total fantasy land.
Yeah,
nobody does that. Like not a single person, right? The line for Tokenique queues all the way down Tokenique, all the way past the light.
For like 20 minutes.
There's buses on the side of the road. It's a nightmare. And there's boatloads of parking, and there's 0 parents parking their cars, walking their kids in. Everybody waits in the queue, and that's just life.
Yeah. That's the same thing. We did it for years. I think extending the bus loop is good.
That's the best thing we can do is extend the bus loops.
At Henley, right?
Yeah.
Because I was told that buses get stuck on the post road, can't turn onto Nearwater, can't turn into the Bowery, and that's a freaking nightmare.
And I think too, it's not really our purview, but if the Board of Ed has better policies and procedures on bus direction in mornings, those queues would be better. Like they're very inefficient. For whatever reason, I see it at Tokenique every morning because I drop my son off. Last year's whatever bus queuing system was really good, and this year's is terrible. There's like 4 or 5 buses that queue on Tokenique Road now that last year never did, and they just stayed in the loop. And it's mostly because there's 7 or 8 feet between the buses. They don't let them, once they're empty, they have to sit there for what seems like 5 or 6 minutes before they're allowed to pull away. And half of the Tokenique bus loop is usually vacant at any given time while buses are sitting on the road while cars are trying to squeeze and turn into a 3-lane road. Yeah. So like those procedures need to be fine-grained. Like even if we increase the bus loop here at Henley, if the procedures stink and they don't have like good monitors or they're lazy about it or whatever, it's not going to do much because we're not adding enough space for like 2 buses to fit in there. We're adding like 1/3 of a bus to like half of a bus.
But see, all that stuff you're talking about is between the
It's-
police department and the school.
Board of Ed,
It's got nothing
right.
to do
So
with
it's
us.
nothing we could do about it, but that's like, there's no way for us to, I don't know if we could say it, it'd be a good idea if they would do this or have better or try and work with it, but like, that would really be, we're adding more capacity, but I don't know that it really matters more than like the procedure of how you get people out of it.
The only thing that history, I used to get stuck at Middlesex School all the time, going from my house to the train station, because I live over by Holmes School, and it was a freaking nightmare, and people would miss the train. But when Middlesex School was approved, they moved the bus loop to the backside. That's why they all come off of Edgerton. And it's like, you know, left side, right side.
Yeah.
That's the way Holmes School is. I think that's the way Royal is, and I think that's the way, I know that's the way Henley is. And I think they're all the same. I don't know how it really works at Tokenique. I'm never there.
They turn in right onto Tokenique Road, and then they turn left into the school loop, and they go around it, and then they turn right out of it.
Right.
So it's a real kind of.
But whatever they're doing at Henley is improving.
It's
traffic.
definitely improving it, yeah.
Okay. Let's skip stormwater management for a second. Landscaping out here, that's fine.
Well, I would like to see them, that back fence at Henley that abuts the church, the east side of it. They said they weren't gonna touch it or clean it up or do anything. Can we have them just at least send the lawn care guys in and like clean up all the vines? Like, I get they're not gonna put in a new fence and it's kind of an older, rusted out chain, but it looks just awful and overgrown and it looks just terrible. Like, if we're gonna redo the whole school and everything, they should clean that side up of it.
We do some kind of maintenance thing.
Yeah, it's getting close. It's pretty awful. And I think
That's your purview, not
Good
ours.
job, man.
Hey, but that's commercial, the church is commercial, right? Can't touch it yet.
it's pretty bad, and I'm sure the church would say that's fine to cut it and clear it up and make it look
Is
nice.
it the church's fence or the school's fence?
It's gotta be the
Oh,
school.
It's the school's fence, and I think most of the overgrowth is on the Henley side of it too.
At Home School, they put all new black chain link fence around the whole freaking thing.
If we
And it's
can,
loud.
I wouldn't mind them replacing that fence. It's old and it's ghetto. It's pretty awful. It was definitely the '70s fence.
Maybe put a recommendation someplace. Improve fencing. ARB design, they signed off on it. On-site lighting, we already beat that to the ground. Dumpster locations, limited grading, phasing project. There's nothing special with dumpster on this one, right? Anything special on
No,
dumpster?
dumpsters in the same
Alright.
location.
Okay, back up to the big one. Stormwater management and drainage considerations. We went through this stormwater management at nauseum with Joe and the neighbors and heard all the problems and all that stuff. They're building a 93,000 gallon capacity thing. Right now, there is no on-site stormwater management system, zero. Yes, it drains into some pipe and then it goes into the other pipe that's at pasture lane, under pasture lane, through the other neighborhood that's there. That's off of our off-site. You could say that it doesn't conform, but according to the engineer that did it, and according to Greg Flaherty, all the satisfaction of 880 has been satisfied. So you can't knock out that we didn't satisfy 880.
And we're improving as well.
You're decreasing most of you're splitting the building in half instead of splitting it east and west, which I thought they were gonna do, which I was wrong. They're splitting it north and south. So there's it's going right from I'm gonna say the south side of the building, which is closer to Stanford, directly into Nearwater Lane. The back half is going to, the dry well system at one point in time, and then on the other system, that's the brand new system, and then into that pipe we were talking about that's in the right of way for Board of Education. He did it, a big study, say it's going down by, I would pick a number, I think it's around 30% on average. There's stuff that has to be done off-site, which is on the other side of the road. That's really not in our jurisdiction, but we can put a recommendation in there that says something to that extent, right?
Certainly, we can mention something like that during the hearing, off-site issues were brought to our attention.
Right, were brought to our attention.
But we will have the Board of Ed maintain at least the easement, the 8,
Yes.
10 feet, whatever, out there. I get we can't do past that, and it's like the town has to get an easement to go in, whoever, but we can force at least the Board of Ed to maintain that portion of it, right?
The Board of Ed's got to maintain from their property line where the new Caltech's gonna go
All the way to the end of
through
the
that
easement.
guy's yard, where in the plans, it has the pipe going dead straight.
Yep.
I think the pipe goes on an angle.
Yeah.
And then it goes dead straight on the property line. Because Joe was out there, I was out there, you know, and if you look inside the manhole in the ground, it's on a right angle. Yeah, I mean, it's on a 45-degree, and it's heading towards the fence, and then it goes, so somebody ripped it up at some point in time. I think that one was already scoped once.
I watched the Vimeo because I couldn't attend, and I recall hearing that obstruction of the pipe near number 4, the Board of Ed facilities was looking to dig it out, but they needed the call before the dig clearance first. What has happened since then?
Well, the hearing's closed, so we don't have anything that we can add to the record relative to that. But I think we can address that in the resolution, that if it's broken, fix it.
Yep.
And if it's fine, yeah, but we can
Yep.
certainly do that,
Yep.
address that issue.
And maintain it as part of the maintenance.
Right.
plan.
Yep, that's just what Adam said there.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to add to the maintenance plan is there's the dry well system that's in the, I'm gonna call it the other parking lot, the main
Yep.
parking lot. Make sure that falls underneath the maintenance plan.
Yep.
In that parking lot, which is in front of the front door of the school, or the one they use today, that's not being touched. But I don't know if there's a maintenance plan attached to that, but those dry wells should fall underneath the other maintenance. other
Okay,
maintenance
good.
plan.
I think
What-
we should, oh, sorry.
You know
Andy,
what
go.
I'm talking about? Go ahead, Amy.
I would like to get the wording on what is required for making sure, proof that there is unencumbered flow on the portion of land that is owned by the Board of Ed. Like, I don't know what the wording is,
Okay,
but,
we'll work on the wording.
yeah, I do think we need to have that be very definitive, that has to
Okay.
be proved to be clear.
The onsite or offsite land?
The on-site land. I mean, we can't really control the no man's pipe, but
This, you're talking about within the easement.
within that easement, we need to make
Written
sure that's
proof.
right.
Right, so that's the off-site land that's within the Board of Education
Yes.
easement?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
That's the pipe that I'm calling, goes
Yeah.
45
If
degrees.
that
thing
easement
going
is
through.
granted for the Board of Ed to drainage use from that location and property, we need to make sure it's serving its purpose.
Okay, because that's a 10-foot wide easement, and the
Yeah.
pipe is 12 inches.
We need to,
You know,
that needs to be
it's-
right.
it's doing
Okay.
something.
That needs to be right, in my mind.
There should be a little, as to who owns that worries me. It seems to me it would be the town of Darien. The only way the Board of Ed gets property is when the town turns over properties to the Board of Ed. I can't imagine they did that with that little spit of land, but,
I mean, that easement to that guy's house.
yeah, I
And
suspect it's with the town and not with the Board of Ed.
I bet you what happened is when they conveyed it to the Board of Ed, they used the legal description from the previous owner, which included the right to the easement.
Could be, could be.
But either way,
And I don't wanna do it.
No, I-
whether it's the
I-
right hand or the
yeah.
left hand,
Yeah.
it's
It's still
Yeah.
town.
it's still
That's
town.
Somebody clean it.
That's the frustrating part for the neighbors, and that's the part I'm sympathetic to, is you got DPW, you got Board of Ed, you got Town of Darien. They look like they're all the same entity. They're not.
They all say
understand.
it's somebody else.
I
And
understand.
everybody's pointing fingers, and I get that frustration. So the only other thing I'd add to that, Jeremy, is when we talked about the line to near water,
Mm-hmm.
right? So as you said, the system that we're putting in, part of it goes to the pasture lane pipe, part of it goes to near water. The
Yes.
neighbors wanted all of it to go to near water. We were told by
Yeah,
DPW
right.
that can't happen. But maybe some statement to the town that they should investigate putting a 16-inch pipe down there.
Because
so
that's
it can-
from that spot,
All the
yeah.
way down
so-
near
so it
water.
can- So it can handle the flow.
Let me leave you with this, that there are, the first selectman and the head of DPW are aware of
All of this.
exactly what happened during the hearing process and the concerns from the neighbors.
Yeah.
And Craig Flaherty's on the flooding committee.
Mr. Flaherty's aware of it, Mr. Gentile's aware of it, First Selectman Monica McNally's aware of it.
I think
So
we should.
there's a pot of money to fix all the flooding problems, so.
Apart from that, making the noting that obviously the pipe is too small to pump all of the water in, like, because a number of people asked the water just all go to near water, right? And from the second hearing, my sense was that even if that pipe were big enough, it would still be difficult based on the elevation, and they'd need like a lot of sumps to be able to do it and to move it all over there, and it still wouldn't really be technically feasible. The maintenance of it would be astronomical, and it wouldn't really make sense. So I think if we look at Joe's testimony to that, if we could just, when we're talking in that section on the findings, maybe include some of his testimony explicitly saying it was looked at that maybe as a potential solution to this problem of pumping it out, and it was deemed not feasible because of elevations and blah, blah, blah. So that we know, it's not just that we said, oh, the pipe is too small and near water, forget it. It's that even if the pipe were big enough, that's still not the best solution because of how the land is contoured.
I think the pumping issue, though, was more for people saying, we want the water pumped to the other side of the property.
Right.
They wanted it pumped out of the
Not
To the they want to pump to like the post road.
Yeah.
No, they wanted it pumped to the other side of the property. They were saying collect it there and then pump it back to the other side of the property. And that's, and I talked to the engineer about that, because then you run into pump failure issues.
Right, the
You run into-
generators.
Yeah, a
Your
whole
word was
host
catastrophic.
of, right, yeah. So he was insistent on gravity, but I don't think that had to do with near water. I think that was more pumping it to the other side of the property.
Because what we were told, they said that piece,
Yeah, I don't remember, I thought it was
that piece
near
was
water.
1,000 feet.
Yeah, it was long.
It's 1,000 feet, which is significant. I thought it was a hell of a lot less than 1,000 feet, but that's the piece where it goes from, I'm gonna say 4 inches, and then 1,000 feet later goes to 16. If it's some day that thing gets switched from 4 to 16, you know, between now and the next 5 years, I think you're great.
And the sidewalk issue is also the town, not in the board's property, right?
Yeah.
There was like 5 feet within the board's property.
I think they can put a sidewalk that goes from the bus loop all the way to Pasture Lane, instead of cut through that guy's yard like
Number
George
two.
used to do.
But
like
that's
George.
a town issue.
The Riley Way.
They
can include it in our
from where the
sidewalk.
bus-
Put up a
You can do it
fence.
from the bus loop until the end of the town property before you get to Mrs., the lady down the corner that put that
Right,
in
but I think
the
that's only like 10 feet.
Better than nothing.
10 feet, yeah. I think.
I mean,
At least it's a start, and the town might finish it.
when somebody came up, I think the guy that owned the house that built on the corner of Middlesex and Hollow Tree Road, we wanted him to change the sidewalk because it's like hills and dales, and I got smacked around. We didn't do it, and the town did it a few years later. Now that whole sidewalk that was from like the high school all the way to the train station down Middlesex is all brand spanking new. You know, I mean, I personally think the town's doing a great job with sidewalks. And they're
Agreed.
putting them all over the place, so if that
Yeah.
piece is 5 feet, that's,
Fine.
Get it started.
yeah, that's nothing for Ed Gentile. That was the only thing I think, because the people all the kids that go to school on Pasture Lane, if what the engine, traffic is that you're supposed to walk across pasture, you're supposed to walk across near water, go up to the post road and walk back.
Yeah.
That ain't happening. There's no way.
And
that's
then,
happening.
and then go all the way to the post road corner, walk across, and then come back down. There's
Right.
just no way that that's ever gonna occur.
Yeah, because when I was out there, I hopped that rock wall with Joe Gannis, and they walked way around, and that's,
Yeah.
no.
Kids will flow
Jump in the
like
wall.
water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no
Where
way.
it can go.
So will water.
Yeah.
So will water.
So true.
So I think the bottom line is, the finding is that all the engineers said they conform to 880, which is the gospel.
Great. If there's anything else, let us know. If not, we will have Royal ready for next week, and we'll endeavor to have Henley ready next week as well. If not, it'll be the week after.
Okay. Do we miss anything? I mean, we might get two cracks at Henley.
Yep.
Okay, that's fine.
Um,
Anything else? You've got great notes. Don't
Yeah.
make sure you get them all. So I think at all three schools, I think it's gonna be a fantastic improvement for the town.
Big time. Gotta get some red brick on Tokenique, though.
I'm working on the red brush now.
yeah.
A lot of complaints about the red brick.
Is that right? Tokenique was
That was
always
honestly the
different.
number one thing people came to me about. was
Oh,
make
the
sure-
color of the school?
Make sure these schools have red brick and it doesn't look like Tokenique. People are pissed about that.
There's,
Well, Tokenique always wanted to be different.
they built some
That was
school back
part of
when
the
I,
deal.
they built some school back when I was a kid in my town, and it's like yellow brick. And they said the only yellow brick building like on Long Island is this place called, it was a hospital. And I was like, whoa, that's hard.
Okay.
That is not good.
All right, next.
Thank you, Amy.
We did those two. Site plan develop, did I open up both? We opened up both?
Yep.
Okay.
Now we're on to the
All
minutes.
right, approval of minutes, November 15, 22 is our first minutes. It's our first night of, or a night of Hindley Elementary School, their main presentation. Then we went into Royal Elementary School, continuation of 573 Middlesex Road, which I forget what that one was, Mrs. Johnson. And then we had the Habsburgs on Pratt Island, which got punted, so we didn't do anything for that one. Then we have election of officers, we have a resolution, adoption of minutes, and all that stuff, we have a resolution we can't touch. Another resolution we can't touch.
Even though I was
Minutes.
here. Still.
Questions, comments, typos, scrivener's errors on this one?
I didn't
Okay.
see any.
No, all good.
A motion to approve as submitted. Adam makes a motion. Looking for a second? Amy makes a second. All in favor? Got it. Next, November 29th, 2022. This is our first continuous of Habsburg. I think it's our first night of Habsburg, where Fred got into it. I guess I wasn't there, right? Oh, yeah, I wasn't there, and I wasn't at that one, that's right. Because George Rogers, I was absent.
Your birthday, right?
His son's birthday.
Son's birthday.
My son's, no, it was after that, I don't know why I wasn't there. You don't have me as attending.
Because you weren't there?
You have 4 people attending in the minutes, and isn't there 6 of us? Two of us is missing.
No, there were 4 there. I just watched the video.
Jeff and you absent that.
Oh, Jeff Wall.
Yep.
All right, so do we usually put that in there? Missing? No.
We don't usually.
Oh, okay, forget it, sorry. All right,
He just wants to see his name.
I like my name all over the place, right? Old Parish Road, a resolution. Another resolution. Approval of minutes. Anything in this one? Questions, comments, typos, scrivener's errors on these minutes?
No.
Good on this?
All good, great, wonderful. If there are any typos or comments, just give them right to Fred. The last one, December 6, 2022.
We need
Oh, I'm sorry, motion to approve those minutes as submitted. Amy
Amy.
makes a motion, look for a second. Mike makes a second with his water bottle. All in favor?
4-0.
Or not?
Bye, Joe.
Five nothing.
There we go. 5-0. Next one, amendment, general meeting, which is December 6, 2022. This was the Make Modern night, where it was kind of simple. We went through that whole thing. Fred gave us a great overview before we got into the application. The next one is 200 Long Lake Point. This is the Schuler's property. The next one we got Habsburg, Deliberations Only, went through all that stuff.
The only question I have on this one is page 14.
Go to it.
Issues during construction E. I wasn't, this I assume was kind of lifted from, they offered to do the same issues that were approved during the last one. I don't know. This
That's
is
part of the-
Delafield.
That's part of the
Delafield.
resolution, we can't change that anyway.
Okay, okay, never mind, never mind.
Middlesex Road deliberations, we went through that. Then we had the resolution, which we can't change. What else? Another resolution that we can't change. And then I think chairman's report. We talked about the initiatives. If you have any comments on that, make sure you let me know about the initiatives. We never kind of really, I don't think we've ever taken those out of draft. And then the other stuff, that's it. Questions, comments, typos of this one? Nothing?
Nope.
Fantastic. Go. Motion to approve these minutes as submitted. Amy makes a motion. Look for a second. George, you in the game tonight?
Yeah.
George is in the game.
Makes
George got the second.
Robin, you know them.
All in favor?
Yep.
5-0.
My water bottle again.
How can I
Chairman?
compete with a water bottle? I don't even bother to try.
There we go. Chairman's report is the next on my agenda. I did write up a bunch of things on the chairman's report. It is kind of late. I can blow through it if you want to. It's stuff that's happening around town. let me just go through some of the events since I took the time to do it. BMW Phase 2 is topped off. That's the building in the back, which is a new service building. It got up to its peak. It's steel now. If you go around the other side, the Milliscope's coming, you can see it. Once the landscaping and all that bush is going, you're not going to see it. I did have a guy call me and ask me if that's what's going to look like. If it's going to get any taller. The answer is no. I also had a guy who was a former commissioner. Goes, "What are they building behind BMW?" You can see it from the dump or from the transfer station, and I'm like, "It's there." But so I think that's coming good. I've never gotten any phone calls, questions, comments besides what I just said from anybody relative to that.
No, we have had inquiries about what's going on and things like that, but, you know, certainly there were numerous hearings and it's being built according to plan.
Yeah, good.
Phase 1 looks really good.
Yeah.
I think that's a real good improvement as to going into Whole Foods right there. The part you can see.
Yeah,
they
the part
just
you can see.
That looks way more improved than it was 3 or 4 years
Yeah,
ago.
it's a lot nicer. And then Phase 1's really the car wash, which works because I've had my car wash done in there. The next item on my list is the Corbin District. They're going to get the demo permit for the post office in about 10 days. The Bank of America building, which is a former gas station, they're going to start training the new employees in that building in February. The branch is supposed to open up in March. Between March and April, they're going to start to move the tenants that are on the other side of the street, Compass and all those guys, into their new buildings on the, I want to call it the east side of the street. The old Bank of America building, which is a 3-story office building that's really big, they're gonna try to demo that somewhere around April, and they're gonna apply for the foundation permits for that building in April. Inside the Corbin District, on that side of the street, which is like all the east side of the street, there's a total of 38 apartments. 14 of them are almost ready now. The one building, which is the Tippett's building on the end, is full and fully leased. In the other building, there's 6 apartments that are leased out of the 10 in there. So that comes of what's been delivered is about 71% leased. You also have to remember they did the 12 units that are the affordable housing that's over done on East Lane. In total, they've built, including 1020, there's 44 new apartments going to be on that street. And 24 of those are under construction, plus the 12 that are around the corner. The next thing on my list is Federal Commons. Building 2 opened. That's the new building that's on the front. The apartments opened. It opened about a week ago, and I think they got their TCFO for the retail space today.
Yes.
Yep, so that's done. They're kind of excited. The developer, which is Patrick McMahon, is kind of excited about that. Gregory's Coffee is full steam ahead now, no pun intended. They did have a couple times at ARB and had to change their plan a few times, but they finally got through that, and they're going full forward. In their first buildings, the last I checked was about a week ago, 37 of the 54 apartments are leased inside the new building that's open, that's the one that's on the Walgreens side. That's 68.5% leased. So that's 37 new families or moved families that we have in our town, which I think is really nice. The sidewalks are all done in front of, they connect from Citibank to in front of what's going to be Gregory's Coffee to in front of Seymour, and then it curves and it connects to Valvalla's. That's all done. There's a driveway there. I spoke to, or I traded correspondence with Patrick Guman about doing stamped asphalt to make those driveways red, which is red brick, which is what they've done in town and they've done in other towns that I've talked about. They're amenable to that, and they're going to look into that. So it looks like a continuous.
Can you also talk to them about that screening?
I started talking about that screen. You got to remind me again about that, because he's going to come in again next week. What Amy's talking about is if you're on Norotan Avenue and you look to the top of Equinox, you can still see all their rusty, lousy HVAC stuff on the top of the building. The idea is to screen that.
And when that pedestrian walkway that's going to come in that way, it's just going to be it's going to be as big as that mural, just where your eye goes.
That pedestrian walkway from Norotan Avenue to the project is done. They just have not opened it yet.
Yeah.
I know you guys, I live on that side of town, so I see it all the time, but that's why I'm make sure we're up and running.
How's our good friend Palmer's doing next door?
I'm gonna get to that just like he's later down the list. The Bartucci's building, which is 54 Post Road, is for sale. It's in a service business zone. Bartucci's closed. It backs up to Land Rover, which doesn't really use that anymore, but it do.
Oh, Bertucci's.
Bertucci's. I said Bartucci's? Bertucci's.
Yeah, I'm like,
The old pizza joint.
Is that bar
What is he
taco or?
The price,
Long Island accent.
exactly. The price of it is about $7.25 million for 2.1 acres of land, which is about almost $3.5 million an acre. The
That's a
existing,
95.
yeah, the existing building is 7,500 square feet. So if you look on the size of the building, it's $971 a square foot for the building.
7-Eleven could afford
Yeah,
it. Probably.
so that's a scrape shut is the way it's being marketed. We'll see what happens there, but if they're gonna scrape it, they're gonna be coming in front of us. Palmer's.
Jeremy, have you seen anything on that?
I have not. I told Steve earlier today. No, Fred, you haven't?
No.
No.
No one's approached us.
There's a broker that's working it that I used to work for, and Jody Dostal is also a town resident. He's a broker on the property too. There's a sign out front that says Cushman & Wakefield property. It says property for lease, but it's really for lease or for sale. And they definitely would rather sell it than lease
What would
it.
you put there? Weird spot.
It's zoned for car dealerships.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's service business. We went through this whole thing when we did, what was that used
Olive
furniture place?
Bertucci's,
Um,
they couldn't make it an Olive Garden, is it?
No.
No,
Yeah,
the
it's too
the
big,
one
man.
with the orange thing out front. It's Bob Calvy's building. That's also service
Right.
business. You're supposed to have something which is outside sales.
Gotcha.
I don't know what the restaurant, if it went to another restaurant, it's restaurant for restaurant, we would never see it. But I don't think a restaurant could afford some of that, but I've been wrong before. With regards to Palmer's, I did speak to Greg Palmer today. He said that he's still going forward with the plan that we approved. We approved their plan plus or minus March 25th, 2022. The approval is a 2-year approval, so there's no real change on that. He told me that they're gonna apply for the building permit soon. And there's no change in the project, no change to the plan that we approved. So we'll see where that goes. I don't have much more announcements on that other than what Greg told me. What else? Long Neck Point, there's a bunch of houses on the market that are being under construction. I think those are all going great. I know they finished some sewer line there too. Monica told me about some sewer line that was connecting houses, so that was something where, I guess a resident requested something, they did some quick fix on there. Ziegler's Farm keeping on Long Neck Point is still on the market for sale. The price is still $85 million. There's 14 lots out of the 16 that are being sold. It's an average price of about $6 million a lot, or it's about, I forget what the acreage, the acreage is somewhere around 50 acres, excluding the roads. It's about 34 acres. The average lot size is about 2.5 acres in a 1 acre zone. I think the 2 lots that are not for sale is at the front, there's a gatehouse, which is where I think his sister lives in, and the one that's all the way at the end, which is next to 99 Long Neck Point, that one's not for sale, because I think the Zieglers traded that in family back in November. I think that is keeping in the same neighborhood. Pear Tree Point, that's that 4-lot subdivision, which was 4 acres, and we subdivided into about 4-acre lots.
Former Pear Tree Point School,
For
yes.
from Pear Tree Point School. The 2 lots that face, that overlook Long Neck Point and overlook the water, face towards Green's Ledge Lighthouse, sold. Those 2 ones are gone. The 2 that are on the other side that overlook Pear Tree Point Road and have the closer docking rights, those are still on the market for sale, and they're about $4.5 million a piece. So we'll see where that happens.
Do all 4 share the dock across the street?
They all 4 do.
I remember there was some sharing weird with the dock.
We did a golf cart path
Yeah.
down the middle because they were supposed to go around the point, and Jen was adamant against that.
Right, so they all share that one dock. They all have rights to it.
They all have rights to it. It's just easier to get there from the Pear Tree Point side.
Yeah, of course, they're downhill.
Yeah,
The 4.5 is unimproved or improved?
unimproved, just for grass.
4.5.
Yeah, which is compared to Ziegler's. Ziegler's, if you want to buy one of those lots, on average, in wholesale, it's 6.
Yeah, I refuse to pay $6 million for it. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
do it.
It's a lot, it's a, yeah.
It's a lot of dirt.
It's a lot of numbers.
It's a lot of cheddar for some dirt.
The Fletcher Company is building a house on the corner of Pear Tree Point and Long Knife Point. I spoke to Nick Fletcher last week. It's a really cool lot on the corner. They have great views looking south towards New York City. That probably has another 12 or 15 months more of construction. So if you go there in the summer, you can still see a thing under construction. I started to check on Walmart. I think they're closing. I didn't double check that again today, but I mentioned that in another meeting, that Walmart's going out and Target's coming in. I'm pretty sure that's still the plan. Wegmans announced again that they are building I think it's a 65,000 square foot store.
It's right after, is it before Stop and Shop or after?
Past Costco.
It's in between Costco and Stop and
Yeah.
Shop, right?
Yeah. So that,
So Walmart's leaving and Wegmans is going into that space?
no,
No,
Walmart's
Target.
leaving, Target's going into Walmart.
Okay.
So you'll be
And-
Home Goods, Target, Home Depot.
Right, and then behind Costco, a little further up the block,
Yep.
really behind that, that's where Wegmans is getting squeezed in there, which is next to the new apartment building.
Yeah.
behind
Before
Gogson.
Chick-fil-A, right? It's the Wegmans?
Yes,
So
yes.
it's gonna be a fun intersection over there.
Yeah, there's a
I
lot
thought
of traffic
MBI's
going on there.
property was involved in it, no?
That is MBI.
It is MBI.
Yes.
Oh, is it?
MBI's
If you-
moving,
if you're on
MBI's
the
moving to
highway
Norwalk.
at Christmas, heading
Yeah.
towards New
Yeah,
York,
you
you
see
still
the
have
lights.
Christmas lights.
Yeah,
Okay.
MBI's moving
How
to
big a
Norwalk.
campus is that? Do you have any idea?
The
Uh,
size of the dirt?
Yeah,
It's at least
6
10
acres, 10
No,
acres.
MBI.
But Wegmans, I mean, MBI was in the paper. They're not moving out for a while.
Yeah.
And it's gonna take Wegmans 2+ years to build, so this is all 3 years away.
Yeah.
Why don't they just take over
Stop and Shop.
Fairway?
Stanford.
What's going on in Stanford?
Yeah, I know.
Fairway?
That Fairway.
Dude.
Is that still empty?
Yeah,
Well,
it's
and they
not-
got a huge, they got that huge
Problem is-
restaurant. What was it? The barbecue joint.
That's empty.
Barbecue.
Dinosaur
I
Barbecue.
mean, what's that? That's a huge.
I went to Taco Daddy's, that place stinks.
You know the reason
You're on
why
the
that,
record here.
I know.
just to get,
It
why
does.
that Fairway went out of business is because all the people from Harbor Point, we lived in Harbor Point when our house was being renovated, to walk between Harbor Point and that Fairway, even though it's only like 3 blocks, it's like you're walking from like the nicest, newest area through the worst section where there's like 2 halfway homes, all kinds of people, and then you get to another island of niceness and there's like shootings over there all the time.
Well, you wanna know why it really closed? Their rent was the highest
Yeah.
grocery store rent in the entire region.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
They just had nobody going in. I mean, that place was empty forever.
The rent was off the charts.
And they had trolley service.
Yeah.
You didn't use the trolley service?
And they had a stern
I did use the
landlord.
trolley to take it from my building in 301 to the train.
Yeah.
Did you-
There's a,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the demo permit for Subway has not been delivered? I've never supposed to sign up for the
It
demo.
was just submitted today.
Okay, there's a demo, so Subway on Heights Road, which is also next to Federal, it's got a demo permit coming out. The house around the corner, which is on Child Tree Ridge Road, where the Blight Division cited them, that house is being demoed. It backs up to Glen Liquors, which backs up to Palmer's. My hope in my
At the
life,
insistence of the Blight Review Board.
there you go, that's what you're here for. My goal was always to have Patton Drive extended directly into there. Greg Palmer was never in the position to buy that house. Plus, they never had title, but now that someone's knocking it down, we might see some movement on that. What else? I had the opportunity to attend a League of Women Voters meeting last week. It was Thursday. It's all over social media that I was there, because my picture is on Facebook, which I never saw before. The 5 Hartford, I called elected officials were there. There are 3 senators and 2 state reps. I asked a couple of little questions. The other chairs that were there was myself, Board of Finance, and then Monica was there as Board of Selectmen. And it was a pretty good meeting. I did ask the panel of the 5 of them, how do you guys look at local control? One of the senators, she said that she doesn't support local control at all. And she thinks that, we shouldn't really have it. And I took it as a question for schools and for P&Z, and I was a little bit surprised about that. I don't think another representative said, there are 2 representatives, both of them said that they're very much into local control. There are a bunch of bills up in Hartford that are looking at that again. So it's something that we gotta keep on our radar screen. I know it's in our,
Is the cadence of when they, propose these bills usually or when, right before a spring break in the town, everybody's gonna go on vacation?
Senator Duff went through a lot of that stuff now, and he threw out some statistics, which I didn't write them down. There's like 1,500 bills that get written this time of year, and then it gets whittled down to like, 500, then it gets whittled down to more, and I guess they act on maybe 200. I'm not really a politician that goes into that, but there's all kinds of stuff that just is out of nowhere. The rep that represents part of Darien is a guy named Tom O'Day from New Canaan. He's a lawyer. I think he said he submitted 54 bills on his own. And I was like, wow. So I was a little surprised about that.
The problem is it's politics, right?
Yeah.
So you just submit it, then you gotta get approval, and then you gotta get committee to approve
Right.
it. It's just
Senator Duff made it sound like he's the clearinghouse for all that stuff. To get it moved forward, it's got to go through the
Majority leader.
Yeah.
Flow.
Bird Code's under construction. That's the old HSBC. They're under construction. I don't know their timing date, but that's a great one.
So is their neighbor.
Complete Angler is under construction.
Finally.
I think that's going to look out. I think it's going to look really good. Relative to those two items, our town is deep into the weeds into OpenGov. I think that's working fantastic because I spoke to a bunch of different developers that are pulling building permits and whatnot. They wanted to make sure that I said these guys are doing a fantastic job. They can get building permits and demolition permits, and Mike Vitti, which is the building inspector, and the fire marshal, all those guys are very, very attentive to what they're doing and issuing good, thorough work and getting the reports done to get these stores open and buildings approved as soon as possible. So shout out to you guys. You got a lot of compliments for a lot of people for all of the stuff that you do, and we thank you too. There was a front page article in the Darien Times on Tuesday that Jeremy was quoted in a lot, talking about the progress we did in 2022 about affordable housing. It said, but enough. I don't know where that's going to go, but that's some of the stuff on there. When I did meet with those representatives at the League of Women Voters meeting, I prefaced it, and nobody really argued with me, that we're in the forefront of all the towns in Connecticut, and I spoke to Jeremy in advance. A lot of the town planners around the state call him for guidance and best practices and how we do it. And I think we're a model, but it's still something we have to keep our eyes on. The first cannabis store in Fairfield County opened up in Research Park, which is about a drive or 3-wood from my house.
I just cut through there the other
Yeah.
day and I saw the sign. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's where.
It's next to the brewery, right? Somewhere
Around the corner from the brewery.
Is
It's like,
this the Feast and
yeah,
Fennel?
that's it.
Yeah.
It's right on the border of Darien. It's a drive-through. People line up outside. You have to go onto an iPad before you even walk at the store to what you're gonna do. We do not have any zoning in our town that allows any of that stuff in our town to either grow it or sell it.
That's correct.
We have no applications. We have no interest in changing that at all, to my knowledge. And I think, we're fine. We also, a lot of the towns that do want them need the tax dollars. I don't think Darien needs the tax dollars. So that's something just to, if anyone asks you, say there's one right on the border of Darien, if you really want to go buy it.
Is that recreational or medical?
Recreational.
Both. They sell both.
It's legal now.
Yeah. 3 parklands, I don't really have too much of an update on that.
I have no update.
It is what it is. They have an approval. I haven't heard any construction stuff on there. They only did a couple other quick items. 2 Squab Lane, I think their approval's expired, and the tenant went away. That's the White House that's behind the old Brooks Brothers, behind 7-Eleven, all that stuff. I think the Dulcettis are gonna come up with a new plan at some point in time.
Did they lose their prior approval?
It would have expired. I never saw anything that.
Did they never ask for any extensions? I mean, they had like a 16,000 square foot building approved back there.
Well, that one expired. The most recent one, it's a 2-story house with a full basement on the bottom. What they were doing is they were digging down and putting a bagel shop in the basement, and then upstairs, or a coffee shop, a bagel shop in the basement, and then upstairs was gonna be a 2-story, like restaurant, where you could have bands and whatnot. That approval expired. Amy Zavatakis was the lawyer that represented on that one. That was a guy, I think that the operator was a guy from Greece. We changed a bunch of parking for that thing too. They had parallel parking and tandem parking. And I think he just, when the pandemic hit, he just said he wasn't gonna expand the town. Jen Leahy was all over that one because of the band and whatnot and the lighting, I think. But I think they're back to the drawing board. The only other one that I want to mention is the Montessori school on Tokenique Road. Anything would happen with that?
That's, that litigation's been withdrawn.
Oh, really? Okay.
So that's a dead issue.
Maslin killed it, huh?
Did they withdraw their application, or is it just an approval sitting out there?
It's just an approval sitting out there that they're
Okay.
probably not gonna use.
Okay, so we approved that school to go there. The piece of property right next door, and I never checked the price on it, is on the market for sale. It's the old, I call it Little Italy Deli. I think it was if I'm correct, a neighborhood of like $2.5 million. I mean, the goal would be to combine those two and do something there. But I've never seen anything, and I was wondering about the lawsuit, so that's true. Not the lawsuit, the appeal. And the appeal was withdrawn. So that's it for me. Any questions anybody ever has? If I don't know it, I can probably find out an answer.
Did anybody, when we did the 6-8 frat, the guy was pretty upset at the end of it. Did he follow through on anything he said?
The appeal period is still running, so they still have time to appeal. We'll know next week or the week after.
So we haven't heard anything from him?
Not after that night, right?
Not after that
Is this the
night.
last
But you
hearing?
explained the bond process to him, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not
You weren't
as
here.
scary as.
I was
think he
here,
No,
no,
you were not
no,
here.
we're not.
No,
Right,
right.
there's many ways to skin that cat. One is you give the town the money, they put it in a bank account.
Right.
The other is getting a letter of credit from the bank in which they charge you a flat fee,
Like 1%.
whatever percent of the total. So I think there's options, and I think Mr. Hausberg's attorney has made those options clear to him.
And this is for the assurance of the roads? For
Yeah.
the
The
roads.
bond for the roads,
Yeah, the
yeah.
bond for the roads.
Yes, okay, I didn't realize there was a interchange after the fact.
Guy was very, very
He was
upset.
very upset.
Very upset about that
He was the
bond.
contractor.
No, he was the owner.
He was the owner, I think.
Because they're bringing in 90 trucks worth of dirt. So,
He was the owner.
190.
That was the owner.
He was the owner.
tall guy.
I thought it was an old couple.
Yeah, I did too.
No, the young
No,
guy.
you're
Older-
confusing,
What am I confusing?
you're confusing a different property.
Delafield.
You're confusing the end of Delafield.
Okay.
That was the older couple with that really rough
confusing that.
property out of the end.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
Yeah.
No, this is a
They
young couple.
destroyed that.
This is another end, but not
Yeah,
the
they destroyed
Delafield.
the concrete
Yeah.
bunker that was out
They're
there.
building a house for their parents or something.
Or their parents are building.
So I think I hit most of the high points of the stuff that's going on around town. You know, we got a lot going on, and these guys are doing a great job, and we got our plates full, but full
Yeah.
steam ahead.
Hang in
Thank
there,
you, everybody.
guys.
Yeah, I'd echo the sentiment that you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Always.
There's been a lot of development in Darien.
Yeah.
Like, keep it up is not easy.
That's for sure. Director's report, anything to add, Jeremy?
Nope, we're gonna be in room 119 the next 2 weeks, because the Board of Finance,
Budget.
in budget time, and Board of Selectmen,
I'm out next week, just as an FYI.
Adam is out
Okay.
next week, got it.
Any other business? 2/3 majority? No other business? Our next meeting is January 31st, so we're off next week, and then February.
No, that is next
That is
week.
next week. And then February 7th? Then February 7th is the week after that, that's 2 days after Super Bowl, is it right?
No, the Super Bowl, I think, is the week after.
Is it? All right.
Super Bowl's in 2 weeks from Sunday.
And Jeremy, you take into account. the
And
school
with that
calendar.
said, the next item on the agenda is
I
motion
think
to adjourn. Look for a motion to adjourn. Adam makes a motion, and George,
I didn't
George
make that
makes the motion to
George
adjourn. Adam's got the second.
There we
All
go.
in favor?
Nine, we're all set.
5-0.
George?